storm gathers, its fury unleashed upon the land. The wind howls, a primal scream against the world, and the rain falls not in drops, but in solid, lashing sheets. In the heart of this chaos stands an ancient oak, a monument of strength and defiance. For centuries, it has refused to yield, its thick trunk and gnarled branches a testament to its stubborn power. It meets the gale head-on, every leaf a tensed muscle, every bough a rigid arm pushed against an unstoppable force. The wind shrieks, and the great tree groans, a deep, resonant sound of struggle. There is a moment of terrible tension, a fight between raw power and immovable will, and then a sound that tears through the storm's roar, a sharp, final crack. A great limb, older than any person alive, surrenders not with a bow, but by breaking. But nearby, in a quiet grove, a different story unfolds. Here, the bamboo grows. As the same ferocious wind descends, the slender stalks do not fight. They dance. They yield, bending so low their tips nearly touch the earth, their leaves singing a rustling song with the gale. They are not resisting the storm, they are moving with it, becoming one with its energy. They surrender completely, and in that surrender, they find their unbreakable strength. When the storm finally passes, and a quiet dawn breaks, the mighty oak is wounded, scarred, a part of its glory lying shattered on the ground. The bamboo grove, however, simply straightens, glistening in the new light, undisturbed. We are taught to be the oak. From our earliest days, we are told that strength is rigidity, that success is a battle of wills against the world. We build our lives like fortresses, bracing against the inevitable storms of work, of relationships, of loss, of uncertainty. We tense our minds, we harden our hearts, and we believe that to bend is to be weak. Yet, we feel the silent fractures forming within, the exhaustion of constant resistance, the anxiety of holding on too tightly, the quiet desperation of a spirit that is always fighting, never flowing. We reach a breaking point, not with a loud crack, but with a slow, internal collapse into burnout and numbness. But what if there is another way? What if true resilience is not found in the unyielding oak, but in the graceful bamboo? This is not a new idea. It is an ancient wisdom, a quiet path that has been offered for thousands of years. It is the wisdom of knowing when to stand firm and when to yield, the strength that comes from being hollow, and the peace that is found not in defeating the storm, but in learning its dance. This is the way of the bamboo, a profound and practical art for navigating our modern world, and it is a journey that begins not with a fight, but with a gentle bow. That unbending tree, the great and stubborn oak, is more than just a story. It is a mirror. Look closely at its struggle, and you may recognize the familiar posture of your own heart in a world that demands incessant strength. We live our lives braced for impact. From the moment we wake, there is a subtle tensing, a preparation for the day's demands. The shoulders tighten, the jaw sets, the mind begins to run, calculating threats and opportunities. We are the oak, standing rigid against the winds of deadlines, expectations, and the relentless pressure to perform, to improve, to succeed. We believe this is resilience. We have been told this is what it means to be strong, but we must ask an honest question. Does it bring us peace, or does it simply make us experts at enduring our own tension? The ancient teachings of the Buddha begin with a clear, unflinching diagnosis of this very state. The foundational insight is summed up in a single, profound word: dukkha. This word, from the ancient Pali language, is often translated as suffering. But this single English word is too small, too narrow to contain its true meaning. To understand dukkha is to understand the very texture of our unease. It is, of course, the obvious pain of life. It is the suffering of sickness, the grief of losing a loved one, the sting of betrayal, the fear of our own mortality. This is the raw, undeniable pain that no one can escape. It is the sharp, bitter wind of the storm that strikes us all. But dukkha runs much deeper than these acute crises. It is also the suffering born from change. Life is fluid, impermanent, a river in constant motion, yet we build dams of expectation, trying to hold it in place. We experience a moment of pure joy, and immediately, a subtle anxiety arises, the fear of it ending. We achieve a long-sought goal, and for a fleeting instant there is satisfaction, only to be replaced by the unsettling question, what's next? We desperately want the people we love to stay the same, for our bodies to remain youthful, for our comfortable circumstances to last forever. Our resistance to the universal law of change, our clinging to things that by their very nature must fade and transform, is a primary source of our quiet desperation. It is like trying to hold a fistful of water. The tighter we squeeze, the faster it slips through our fingers, leaving us with a feeling of loss and frustration. Yet, there is a third, even more subtle layer to dukkha, and it is perhaps the most pervasive in our modern world. It is the background hum of dissatisfaction. It is a fundamental sense that something is not quite right, that something is missing. It is the low-grade, chronic restlessness that keeps us scrolling through our phones, seeking a distraction we cannot name. It is the feeling of being vaguely bored and agitated at the same time. It is the tension in the chest as you lie in bed on a Sunday night, dreading the week to come. It is the emptiness that follows a major purchase you were convinced would make you happy. This is the dukkha of ordinary, everyday existence. It is not the violent storm, but the oppressive humidity that saps our energy and dulls the colors of the world. We can have a good job, a loving family, a comfortable home, and still, this feeling of incompleteness, of being fundamentally unsettled, persists. And our reaction to this feeling is almost always the same. We try to be a better oak tree. We believe the solution is to add another layer of armor. If we just get that promotion, if we just find the perfect partner, if we just organize our lives more efficiently, if we just become stronger, tougher, more disciplined, then this inner hum of discontent will finally cease. We double down on our rigidity, strengthening our resistance, believing that the fault lies with the wind and not with our response to it. This very response, this tensing against the nature of reality, is what turns the discomfort of dukkha into the sharp pain of suffering. It is here that one of the most practical teachings of the Buddha illuminates our condition, the parable of the second arrow. Imagine a person walking through a forest. Suddenly, out of nowhere, an arrow strikes them in the arm. The pain is immediate, sharp, and real. This is the first arrow. It represents the unavoidable pains of life, the sickness, the loss, the accident, the harsh word. These things happen. They are part of the landscape of human existence. To be alive is to be vulnerable to the first arrow. But what happens next is a choice. The person, struck by the first arrow, begins to lament. Why me? This is terrible. I can't believe this happened. What if I get hit again? This is unfair. This will ruin everything. Their mind begins to race, creating stories of catastrophe and injustice. Overwhelmed by this storm of reactivity, of fear and anger, they fail to see what they are doing. In their panic, they take out another arrow and drive it into their own leg. This is the second arrow. The Buddha explained that the first arrow is inevitable pain. The second arrow is optional suffering. The pain from the first arrow is real, but the suffering, the anguish, the despair that is the work of the second arrow, an arrow that we fire at ourselves. We fire this second arrow every single day. The first arrow is the critical email from your boss. The second arrow is the hours of obsessive worry, the replaying of the words in your head, the imagined catastrophic consequences that poison the rest of your day. The first arrow is being stuck in traffic. The second arrow is the surge of blinding rage, the tightened grip on the steering wheel, the shouting at other drivers that raises your blood pressure and ruins your morning. The first arrow is a feeling of loneliness. The second arrow is the narrative we build around it. I am unlovable. I will always be alone. Our rigid expectation that life should be free of traffic, criticism, and loneliness is the very thing that makes the second arrow so sharp and so potent. Our stubborn, oak-like insistence that the wind should not blow is precisely what creates the friction that leads to our breaking. We are not broken by the world, we are broken by our resistance to it. To hear this, to acknowledge the reality of dukkha and the self-inflicted nature of the second arrow, can feel disheartening. It can sound like a philosophy of pessimism, but this is a profound misunderstanding. To look clearly at the nature of our suffering is the most courageous and hopeful act we can perform. Imagine going to a doctor with a persistent illness, a doctor who pats you on the back and says, "Don't worry, just think positive thoughts," offers you no real help. But a doctor who runs the tests, who looks unflinchingly at the results, and who gives you a clear and honest diagnosis. You have an infection is giving you a gift of immense value. The diagnosis is not the illness. It is the first step toward the cure. It is the map that shows you the way out of the forest. To acknowledge dukkha is not to resign oneself to a life of misery. It is the opposite. It is to turn on the lights in a dark room. For the first time, you can see the layout of the furniture you have been stumbling over. You can finally see the nature of your own mind, the patterns of reactivity, the habit of firing that second arrow. This seeing is not cause for despair. It is the dawn of clarity. It is the empowering realization that if a significant portion of our suffering is self-created, then it can also be self-uncreated. We cannot always stop the first arrow, but we can, with practice, learn to put down the second. Our journey begins here, with this honest, compassionate diagnosis. We have seen the way of the oak, the path of rigid resistance, and we have felt the splinters of its breaking. Now, we can begin to wonder, if not the oak, then what? What does it mean to learn from the storm, instead of just enduring it? If the unyielding oak is the mirror of our struggle, we must turn our gaze to the whispering grove of bamboo. It offers not an escape, but a different answer to the same elemental questions of existence. To step into a bamboo forest is to enter a world of profound peace. The light filters down in soft, green-tinted columns, and the air itself seems calmer, quieter. There is a gentle, rustling sound, a constant shushing whisper as the slender stalks brush against one another in the breeze. It is the sound of a community that lives in harmony with the wind, not in opposition to it. Here, strength is redefined. Power is expressed not through rigid force, but through graceful yielding. The way of the bamboo is a deep and practical philosophy, a path of wisdom that is understood not by dissecting it with the intellect alone, but by observing its four great qualities: its flexibility, its resilience, its hollow core, and its elegant simplicity. These are not merely botanical traits, they are profound instructions for a life of unshakable peace. First, consider its flexibility. When the gale blows, the bamboo does not meet force with force. It does not tense its body and brace for a collision. Instead, it bows. It yields with a grace that seems almost reverent, surrendering to the immense power of the wind. This is not weakness, it is supreme intelligence. The bamboo understands a fundamental truth that the oak, in its pride, ignores. You cannot win a war against the weather. To fight against the fundamental forces of nature is a form of insanity. In our own lives, we fight this war constantly. We argue with reality. A project at work fails, and we resist. This shouldn't have happened. Someone we love acts in a way we don't like, and we protest. They should be different. We get sick, and we rage against our own bodies. I don't have time for this. Each of these mental battles is a miniature act of becoming the rigid oak, of tensing against the unchangeable facts of the present moment. This resistance creates immense friction, a grinding internal state of stress and agitation. The way of the bamboo teaches the wisdom of acceptance. Acceptance is not passive resignation or condoning harm. It is the clear-eyed, courageous act of seeing what is true in this moment and ceasing our futile war against it. It is to say, this is the reality I am facing right now. By bowing to the reality of the situation, we stop wasting our energy in a useless fight. We stop firing the second arrow. This flexibility preserves our strength, allowing us to meet the moment with clarity and a calm mind, rather than with the exhaustion of constant internal conflict. From this flexibility, the second quality, resilience, is born. After the storm has passed, the bamboo does not remain bent. It slowly, gracefully, returns to its upright position, pointing once more to the sky. Its ability to survive, to endure, comes directly from its willingness to yield. This turns our conventional understanding of strength on its head. We are taught that resilience is about having thicker armor, about becoming tougher, about building higher walls around our hearts. We believe that to be resilient is to be unaffected, to not be hurt. The bamboo shows us that true resilience is the opposite. It is the capacity to be fully affected, to feel the force of the wind, to bend all the way to the ground if necessary, and then to rise again. An emotionally rigid person, when faced with grief or failure, often shatters. Their defenses are breached, and they have no other way of being. An emotionally flexible person, however, feels the grief fully. They bend with the sorrow. They allow it to move through them without resistance. And because they do not fight it, the energy of the emotion eventually passes, and they are able to return to their center. Their strength is not in their armor, but in their softness. They are resilient not because they are unbreakable, but because they are unshatterable. They have learned that the softest things in the world can overcome the hardest. The third quality is perhaps the most mysterious and profound: the bamboo's hollow core. A solid pole of wood of the same size would be far heavier and, in many ways, more brittle. The bamboo's incredible strength-to-weight ratio, its ability to bend so far without snapping, is possible precisely because it is empty inside. This is a perfect metaphor for one of the deepest teachings of the Buddha, anatta, or non-self. We spend our entire lives cultivating and defending a solid sense of self. We believe we are our thoughts, our memories, our jobs, our opinions, our accomplishments, and our wounds. We create a dense, heavy, solid core of me, and we carry it everywhere. This solid self is what feels insulted. It is what feels threatened by criticism. It is what is terrified of failure, because failure calls its very identity into question. It is this solid self that is the target for all of life's arrows. But the wisdom of the bamboo suggests a radical alternative. What if our strength lies not in being full of ourselves, but in being empty of a fixed, rigid self? This emptiness, called shunyata in Sanskrit, is not a nihilistic void. It is a liberating spaciousness. It is the freedom that comes from realizing you are not a static noun, but a dynamic verb. You are not a thing, but a process. A Zen story tells of a master and a student walking by a bamboo grove. The student asks, "Master, what is the secret to the bamboo's strength?" The master smiles and taps a stalk with his finger, producing a deep, resonant, hollow sound. "This," he says, "the secret is the emptiness. When there is no solid self to defend, insults lose their sting. When there is no fixed identity to uphold, failure becomes a lesson, not a verdict. Life's challenges can pass through you like the wind through the hollow stalk, and you remain whole. It is the ultimate flexibility, the freedom from our own self-imposed prison." Finally, there is the fourth quality, its elegant simplicity. Look at a stalk of bamboo. It is clean, uncluttered, and grows in a straight, determined line towards the light. Its form is a lesson in economy and purpose. It does not waste energy on ornate branches or complicated foliage. It is the embodiment of minimalist grace. We live in a world that worships complexity and accumulation. We are encouraged to want more, to do more, to be more. We fill our lives with possessions, our schedules with endless obligations, and our minds with a relentless flood of information and digital noise. This constant addition creates a crushing weight. We feel overwhelmed and scattered because we are. Our energy is dissipated in 1,000 different directions. The bamboo offers a path of subtraction. It teaches that peace is not found by adding more to our lives, but by gracefully letting go of what is non-essential. It is about finding wealth in needing less. It is the clarity that comes from an uncluttered mind, the peace of a simple schedule, the freedom of a life unburdened by the constant pursuit of more. This simplicity is not about deprivation. It is about focusing our precious energy on what truly matters, just as the bamboo focuses all its energy on growing towards the light. These four qualities, flexibility, resilience, hollowness, and simplicity, are not separate ideas. They are facets of a single, integrated way of being. The way of the bamboo is a complete vision for a life of sanity and grace in a world that often seems to have neither. It is a strength that is gentle, a power that is yielding, a presence that is spacious and light. It is a path that honors the storms of life by learning how to dance with them. These qualities are not just beautiful poetry. They are practical skills, states of mind and heart that can be intentionally cultivated by any one of us. To learn how to grow our own inner bamboo grove, we must first understand with even greater clarity the nature of the wind itself, the true source of the storms that we face. To stand like the bamboo, we must understand the wind, not just its feel on our skin, but its origin, its true source. We tend to think of life's storms as external events, the demanding boss, the volatile economy, the unexpected illness. The actions of others, these are the winds that buffet us, the forces that seem to dictate our inner weather. We see ourselves as passive recipients of a turbulent world, but the wisdom of the Buddha invites us to look deeper, to ask a more radical question. What if the destructive force of the wind is not coming from the outside? What if the gale that threatens to uproot us is generated from within the vast, uncharted territory of our own minds? This is the essence of the second noble truth, known as samudaya, the origin of our disquiet. It teaches that the root of our suffering, the engine of our deep dissatisfaction, is a powerful primal force called tanha. Tanha is a Pali word often translated as craving or desire, but its feeling is closer to a burning, unquenchable thirst. It is not a gentle preference, but a desperate, life or death grasping for something to soothe a fundamental inner fire. It is a constant leaning forward, a restless impulse that says, I need something else to be complete. This thirst is the true source of the wind, and it manifests in three distinct ways, flowing through every aspect of our modern lives. The first and most obvious form is the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the relentless craving for things that feel, taste, sound, and look good. It is the chase for the next delicious meal, the next captivating movie, the next beautiful object, the next thrilling experience. In our digital age, this thirst has been weaponized. It is the compulsive need to check our phones for the next notification, the next like, the next hit of validation. It is the endless scrolling through images of perfect lives and exotic vacations, each one a whisper that our own life is not enough. The problem is not the pleasure itself. A beautiful sunset or a wonderful meal is a gift. The suffering comes from the clinging, the desperate dependence on these fleeting experiences for our happiness. Because all sense pleasures are impermanent, this path is a guaranteed recipe for disappointment. The pleasure fades, and the thirst immediately returns, often stronger than before, demanding the next hit. We become like a person drinking salt water to quench their thirst. The more we drink, the thirstier we become, trapped on a treadmill of endless seeking and fleeting satisfaction. The second form of this thirst is more subtle, yet far more powerful in shaping our lives. It is the thirst for existence, for becoming. This is the deep, driving need to be someone. It is the craving for status, for recognition, for a better future self. It is the voice in our head that says, when I finally get that promotion, then I will be secure and happy. It is the belief that, when I lose the weight and achieve the perfect body, then I will be worthy of love. It is the fantasy that, when I find the right partner or move to that new city, then my real life will begin. This thirst for becoming projects our happiness onto an imaginary future, and in doing so, it constantly devalues the present moment. It perpetuates the core delusion that who we are, right now, is fundamentally insufficient. This is the engine of our ambition, our anxiety-fueled striving, our gnawing insecurity. We construct elaborate identities: the successful professional, the perfect parent, the enlightened individual, and then we live in constant fear of failing to live up to these self-imposed images. This form of tanha keeps us perpetually striving, forever climbing a ladder that has no top, preventing us from ever arriving in the only place life actually exists, right here, right now. The third form of thirst is the shadow of the first two. It is the thirst for non-existence, for annihilation. This is the energy of aversion. Just as we desperately grasp for pleasant experiences, we violently push away unpleasant ones. It is the fierce no we shout internally at reality. When a wave of anxiety arises, our first instinct is to kill it, to distract ourselves, to numb it, to do anything to make it go away. When we are faced with a person we dislike, we are consumed with the desire for them to disappear. When a painful memory surfaces, we shove it back down into the darkness. This aversion, this pushing away, creates immense inner tension. It is a declaration of war on our own experience. We treat our own feelings of sadness, fear, or anger as enemies to be vanquished, rather than as messengers to be understood. This desperate struggle to annihilate what is already present in our minds is a source of profound and exhausting suffering. It is the ultimate act of rigidity, of being the oak tree that refuses to accept the existence of the wind, and it is the very definition of firing the second arrow at ourselves. A timeless parable illustrates how this clinging, this refusal to let go, becomes our cage. Imagine a clever monkey who discovers a small clay jar with a narrow neck, filled to the brim with delicious, tempting beans. The monkey, driven by its desire, reaches its hand into the jar and grasps a huge handful of the beans, far more than it could possibly eat at once. But now, its fist, fat with its prize, is too large to pass back through the narrow neck of the jar. It is trapped. The monkey pulls and screeches, yanking its arm with frantic desperation, but its fist will not budge. It grows furious and terrified, yet it never occurs to the monkey that the solution is effortlessly simple. All it has to do is open its hand and let go of the beans. Its freedom is a single, simple act of release away, but its own craving, its own clinging, has become its prison. We are this monkey. The beans are all the objects of our thirst. The pleasures, the ambitions, the resentments, the cherished opinions, and the rigid identities we refuse to release. The jar is the circumstance of our life, and our own mind is the trap. We wail against our fate, blaming the jar, blaming the world, never realizing that the key to our own freedom is already in our hand. It is the power to simply let go. This clinging extends even to our most cherished ideas. We grasp our political opinions, our religious beliefs, and our personal philosophies as if they were our very bones. When someone challenges these ideas, we feel it as a physical attack. We defend our identity as a smart person, a good person, or a victim, and we go to war to protect these labels. This intellectual and emotional rigidity makes us brittle. It prevents us from listening, from learning, from connecting with those who are different. The root of all this thirst, this desperate clinging and pushing away, is said to be a fundamental ignorance, or avijja. This is not a lack of intelligence, but a profound misperception of reality. We are like sailors trying to navigate the ocean with a map of the mountains. We seek permanence in a world that is defined by change. We seek a solid, unchanging self in a reality that is a fluid, interconnected process. We seek lasting, ultimate happiness in things that are, by their very nature, fleeting and unable to satisfy us. This fundamental misunderstanding is the fertile ground from which all our thirsty roots grow. Realizing this is not a cause for blame or shame. It is a moment of profound empowerment. The storm that we thought was an external, malevolent force is actually a weather pattern generated by our own inner world. The relentless push and pull we feel, the sense of being a victim of circumstance, is the feeling of being dragged around by our own thirsts. The source of the wind is within us. And this is the best news we could possibly receive. Because if we are the source of the storm, then we hold the power to find its calm center. If our own thirst is what fuels the gale, then a crucial question arises. A question filled with liberating possibility. Is it possible for this thirst to be quenched? Is it possible for the wind to cease? To the soul caught in the storm of its own thirst, to the heart that feels trapped like the monkey with its hand in the jar, the teachings of the Buddha offer a truth of unimaginable hope. This is the third noble truth, known as Nirodha, which translates as cessation, or the end. It directly answers the desperate question that echoes in the quiet moments of our lives. Is it possible for this struggle to end? Is there a state beyond this restless striving and perpetual dissatisfaction? The answer offered is a clear, compassionate, and unequivocal yes. There is a possibility of release. The thirst can be quenched. The wind of our own making can, indeed, cease. This possibility, this ultimate state of peace and freedom, is known by a word that is at once famous and profoundly misunderstood: nirvana. For many in the Western world, the word nirvana conjures images of a blissful, cloud-filled heaven, a paradise one enters after death, or a state of dreamy, checked-out oblivion. It has been romanticized and commercialized to the point that its true meaning, its practical and psychological depth, has been almost entirely lost. The first thing we must understand is that nirvana is not a place. It is not a destination you travel to. It is a state of being you uncover within yourself, available in this very life, in this very body. It is not a reward for a life of suffering, but the end of suffering itself. To grasp its meaning, we must look at the word's literal translation. The root of nirvana means to extinguish, to blow out, or to quench, as one would extinguish a candle flame or quench a fire. This is the key. It immediately connects us back to the source of our suffering, the burning fires of Tanha, the thirst. What is extinguished in nirvana is not your life, not your personality, not your joy or your capacity to love. What is extinguished are the three fires that cause all our anguish: the fire of greed and craving, the fire of hatred and aversion, and the fire of ignorance and delusion. Imagine a single flame burning on a candle wick. The flame is agitated, always flickering and dancing, consuming the fuel of the wax and the oxygen in the air to sustain itself. It is in a constant state of agitation and consumption. Our minds, when driven by craving and aversion, are just like this flame, always flickering with desire, always agitated by fear, always consuming our energy in a restless dance. Now, imagine a cover is slowly lowered over the candle. The oxygen is cut off. The flame doesn't scream or fight. It doesn't travel to a flame heaven. It simply ceases. It is liberated from its agitated, consuming nature. The heat and frantic light are transformed into a state of coolness, darkness, and utter peace. This cessation is Nirodha. Our suffering is the fire. Our clinging, our resistance, our craving, this is the fuel and oxygen we relentlessly supply to keep it burning. The path of wisdom teaches us how to gently, skillfully stop providing the fuel. When we stop feeding the fires of greed and hatred, they naturally, effortlessly go out. The result is not a void, but a profound peace. The mind, no longer burning with the fever of wanting and not wanting, settles into its natural state, cool, clear, and calm. What does this state of being feel like? It is crucial to understand that this peace is not apathy or indifference. This is a common fear for those of us raised in a culture that equates desire with ambition and passion. We think, if I extinguish my desires, won't I just become a listless zombie? Won't I lose my motivation to achieve anything or to love anyone? This fear comes from a misunderstanding of what fuels us. Motivation born from the fire of craving is always stressful. It is the frantic, insecure energy of, I need this to be happy. It is brittle and exhausting. Motivation born from a place of clarity and compassion, the qualities of a mind in the state of Nirodha, is entirely different. It is calm, steady, and sustainable. You act in the world not out of a desperate need to get something, but out of a clear-seeing wisdom and a genuine care for the well-being of yourself and others. Your actions become more effective, not less, because they are no longer clouded by the smoke of ego and fear. This is the calm within the swaying of the bamboo. To attain this peace does not mean that the winds of life will stop blowing. The demanding boss will still be demanding. The economy will still be volatile. People will still get sick. The first arrows will still fly. The difference is that you are no longer a rigid oak, but a flexible bamboo with a still, hollow center. The external events can cause the stalk of your life to sway, to bend, even dramatically, but your inner core remains untouched, in a state of unshakable tranquility. This is a peace that does not depend on external conditions. It is not the fragile peace of everything is finally going my way. It is a deep, abiding peace that underlies all experience, a quiet stillness that can hold the loudest storm. It is a state of profound freedom, the freedom from the tyranny of your own reactive mind. You are no longer a slave to every passing impulse, no longer hijacked by every surge of anger or fear. A space opens up between the stimulus of the world and your response. In that space lies your freedom to choose a wise, compassionate, and peaceful way of being, rather than an automatic, conditioned reaction. It is the freedom the monkey finally discovers when it relaxes its fist and lets go of the beans. In the midst of your ordinary day, this state manifests in simple, tangible ways. You are driving, and another car recklessly cuts you off. The old, fiery reaction would be a surge of adrenaline, a tightened jaw, a shouted curse, a cloud of anger that follows you for the next hour. The Nirodha response is not a blank nothingness. It is a clear seeing of the event. That car moved quickly and dangerously, without the added fuel of personal offense. There is no second arrow. The event happens and passes, leaving your inner peace undisturbed. You receive harsh criticism. The old reaction is a firestorm of insecurity, a mental replay of the words on a loop, the painful story of "I am not good enough." The state of cessation allows you to hear the words, to calmly assess if there is any truth to learn from, and to let the rest go without it scarring your sense of self-worth. It is the ability to savor a moment of joy, a conversation with a friend, the warmth of the sun fully and completely, without the clinging mind whispering, "I hope this never ends." A thought which paradoxically pulls you out of the very moment you wish to preserve. Nirodha, then, is not some far-off, mythical goal for saints and ascetics. It is the present possibility of peace that is revealed when we stop fighting with ourselves and with the world. It is the natural state of a mind that is no longer at war. It is the discovery that beneath all the noise of our striving and our fear, there has always been a deep, silent, and indestructible core of well-being. Knowing that such a state is possible, that there is an end to the storm, is the greatest hope we can have. It turns the entire project of our lives from a desperate struggle for survival into a joyful journey of discovery. But to know that a destination exists is one thing. To walk the path is another. If this state of profound peace is truly possible, what are the actual, practical steps we can take to get there? We need a guide, a set of instructions, a map that can lead us out of the tangled forest of our suffering and into the clear, open field of peace. We stand at a place of profound hope. We have looked into the nature of our unease, our dukkha, and seen it not as a random punishment, but as a conditioned state. We have identified its source, not in the world outside, but in the inner thirst, the tanha, of our own minds. And we have been given the breathtaking news that this thirst can be quenched, that a state of deep, abiding peace called nirvana is a present possibility. A diagnosis has been made, the cause has been found, and the possibility of a cure has been confirmed. The logical question that follows is the most practical one of all. What is the prescription? If there is a way out of the storm, what is the path we must walk? This is the gift of the fourth noble truth, known as Magga, the path to the cessation of suffering. And this path is not a vague suggestion to be good or think positive. It is a clear, detailed, and comprehensive training program for the human heart and mind, the Noble Eightfold Path. Before we walk this path, we must first understand what it is, and more importantly, what it is not. In a world accustomed to religious systems built on commandments and divine laws, it is easy to misinterpret this path as another list of rules to obey. But the Noble Eightfold Path is not a set of commandments. There is no divine judge waiting to punish you for taking a wrong turn. Instead, it is best understood as a physician's prescription for well-being, or a master artisan's guide to skillful living. It is based entirely on the natural law of cause and effect. It is a pragmatic declaration that says, if you want to experience less suffering and more peace, then cultivate these 8 qualities in your life. If you cultivate these factors, this will be the result. It is a path of practice, not of belief. It does not ask for your faith. It asks for your sincere effort and your curious attention. It is a path for living, not a system for believing. Imagine you hear of a distant, beautiful city where the inhabitants live in a state of peace and harmony. Knowing the name of the city is not enough to get you there. Reciting its name over and over will not transport you. To make the journey, you need a reliable map, a clear understanding of the terrain, and you must be willing to take the actual steps, one after another. The Noble Eightfold Path is this map and this journey, all in one. It is a holistic system where each part supports and strengthens all the others. The 8 factors are not a linear sequence, like rungs on a ladder that you climb and leave behind. They are more like the 8 spokes of a wheel, all connecting to the central hub and all essential for the wheel to turn smoothly. Or, to return to our grove, they are like the different elements needed to cultivate healthy bamboo. You need good soil, the right amount of water, adequate sunlight, and space to grow. You cannot focus on one to the exclusion of the others. As you cultivate one aspect of the path, the others naturally begin to flourish. To make this comprehensive path more understandable, its 8 factors are traditionally grouped into 3 essential trainings. These are not separate subjects, but 3 facets of a single, integrated education in the art of being human. The first is the training in wisdom, or panya. This is the seeing component of the path. It is about developing a clear, undistorted perception of reality, like having an accurate map and a reliable compass. It contains two factors: right view, which is the foundational understanding of the nature of life and suffering, and right intention, which involves aligning our inner motivations with this clear seeing, cultivating intentions of kindness, letting go, and compassion. Wisdom is what ensures our journey is heading in the right direction. The second is the training in ethical conduct, or sila. This is the acting component of the path. It governs how we engage with the world and with each other. If wisdom is the map, then ethical conduct is how we walk the path without causing harm to ourselves or others. It ensures that our journey is a graceful one, not a clumsy one that leaves a trail of wreckage. This training includes three factors: right speech, which is the practice of using words that are true, kind, and beneficial; right action, which involves behaving in ways that respect and protect life, refraining from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct; and right livelihood, which means engaging in work that is honorable and does not contribute to the suffering of others. By cultivating sila, we create an external environment of peace and trust that provides a stable foundation for the deeper work of training the mind. The third is the training in mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the training, the mind component of the path, the development of the vehicle that will carry us on our journey. It is here that we learn to tame the wild, scattered energy of our minds and transform it into a powerful, focused, and resilient tool. This training consists of the final three factors: right effort, the balanced and intelligent application of our energy to encourage wholesome states of mind and discourage unwholesome ones; right mindfulness, the heart of the practice, which is the skill of maintaining a moment-by-moment, non-judgmental awareness of our inner and outer experience; and right concentration, the ability to unify the mind, to gather its scattered energies, and bring it to a state of deep stillness and focus. This training gives us the strength, stability, and clarity needed to not just see the path, but to actually walk it, especially when the terrain gets difficult. These three trainings, wisdom, conduct, and mental discipline, work in a beautiful synergy. A clear view of reality, wisdom, inspires us to act and speak more kindly. Conduct, living an ethical life, calms the mind, removing guilt and restlessness, which makes it much easier to develop focus and awareness. Mental discipline, and a trained, mindful mind, mental discipline, is the very instrument that allows us to see reality more clearly, thus deepening our wisdom. The wheel turns, and with each rotation, our practice becomes stronger and more integrated. The journey to the city of peace becomes less of a struggle and more of a natural unfolding. The map, wisdom, becomes clearer, our way of walking, conduct, becomes more graceful, and our capacity to journey onward, mental discipline, becomes more steadfast. This path is a call to become a conscious participant in your own life. It is an invitation to move from being a passive victim of your own conditioned reactions to becoming an active cultivator of peace, wisdom, and compassion. It is not about adding more complicated beliefs or rituals to your life. If anything, it is a path of simplification, of letting go of the mental baggage that weighs you down. It is not about striving to become a perfect Buddhist. It is about using these timeless, universal principles to become a more awake, more sane, and more kind version of yourself. It is a path that honors the reality of our suffering, while simultaneously offering a practical, accessible, and profoundly hopeful way out. The journey of 1,000 miles, as it is said, begins with a single step. For the Noble Eightfold Path, that first, crucial step is learning to see. It begins with cultivating a right view of the world and of ourselves. A journey begins with a single step, but that step is preceded by something even more fundamental: a glance at the map. If the map is wrong, every step you take, no matter how determined, will only lead you further astray. If your map shows a clear path where there is truly a deep river, your journey is destined for frustration, confusion, and failure. The entire structure of the Noble Eightfold Path is built upon this truth. It begins not with an action, not with a command to do something, but with a call to see something. This foundational step, the very bedrock of liberation, is called right view, or in the Pali language, samadhi. It is the process of correcting our deeply flawed internal map of reality, so that for the first time, we can navigate the world as it truly is, not as we wish or fear it to be. To understand the power of right view, consider this simple story. A man is walking along a path at dusk. The light is fading, and shadows play tricks on the eyes. Suddenly, he freezes. Coiled on the path ahead, he sees a snake, poised to strike. His heart begins to pound in his chest, his palms sweat, and a wave of pure terror paralyzes him. His entire reality is now organized around this perception. There is a dangerous snake in front of me. His mind races with catastrophic thoughts, and his body is flooded with the chemistry of fear. In that moment, the snake is absolutely real. Then, a friend approaches from behind, carrying a lantern. The friend raises the light, and its warm glow floods the path. In the clear light, the man sees the truth. It was never a snake. It was only a coiled piece of old rope. In the instant of that clear seeing, what happens to his fear? It does not need to be fought, suppressed, or reasoned with. It simply vanishes. It evaporates completely, because its cause, the misperception, has been removed. This is the function of right view. It is the lantern that illuminates the shadows of our minds, revealing that most of the terrifying snakes that torment us are nothing more than harmless ropes, phantoms born from the dim light of our own confusion. Our default state of mind, the map we are all given at birth and have reinforced our whole lives, is one of deep misperception. This is the wrong view. It operates on a set of core, unexamined assumptions. First, we implicitly believe that things are, or should be, permanent and stable. We build our lives as if our youth, our health, our relationships, our careers, and our possessions will last. We seek solid ground in a world that is more like a flowing river. Second, we believe that lasting, genuine happiness can be found in acquiring and holding on to things outside of ourselves as objects, experiences, status, or the approval of others. And third, and most profoundly, we operate from an unshakable conviction that at the center of our being, there is a fixed, solid, independent me. We believe in a permanent self, an ego, a little CEO in the headquarters of our mind who is the thinker of our thoughts and the feeler of our feelings. This default map, with its belief in permanence, external salvation, and a solid self, is fundamentally at odds with the true nature of reality. This mismatch, this constant friction between our map and the actual territory, is the ultimate source of the second arrow. It is why we suffer. Right view is the process of systematically replacing this flawed map with one that is accurate. It is the cultivation of a way of seeing that is aligned with reality. This correct view is often described through the lens of three fundamental characteristics of all existence, known as the three marks of existence. The first of these is anicca, or impermanence. This is the truth that everything is in a constant state of flux. Nothing is static. This is not a depressing philosophical statement. It is a simple, observable fact. The seasons change, the mountains erode, our bodies age. But anicca points to a much more intimate and immediate reality. Your thoughts are impermanent. They arise in the mind, stay for a moment, and vanish. Your emotions are impermanent. Joy, sadness, anger, and peace are like weather patterns that move through the sky of your awareness. Even your most cherished sense of self is impermanent, changing from moment to moment based on your mood, your health, and your circumstances. To truly see and accept the radical impermanence of everything is not to become nihilistic or apathetic. It is to awaken to the preciousness of this very moment, for it will never come again. It allows us to hold our experiences, both pleasant and painful, more lightly, knowing this too shall pass. It is the beginning of letting go. The second mark is dukkha, which we have explored as suffering or unsatisfactoriness. Right view allows us to see the connection between anicca and dukkha, because all things are impermanent. Any attempt to cling to them as a source of lasting happiness is doomed to fail. To seek permanent security in a world that is fundamentally insecure is to guarantee a state of chronic dissatisfaction. It's like trying to build a permanent sandcastle right at the water's edge. The tide of impermanence will always come in. Again, this is not a pessimistic judgment that life is terrible. It is a clear-eyed, pragmatic diagnosis. It simply states that a life strategy based on clinging to the impermanent is inherently flawed and will not lead to the lasting peace we seek. Seeing this clearly allows us to stop investing our emotional energy in a strategy that can never pay off. The third and most transformative mark of existence is anatta, or non-self. This is perhaps the most challenging and liberating insight of the path. It directly confronts our deepest held belief, the belief in a solid, separate self. Right view reveals that when we look for this permanent me, this thinker behind the thought, we cannot find it. What we find instead is a dynamic, interdependent process. What we call ourself is a flowing river of 5 interconnected processes: the physical body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations like thoughts and intentions, and consciousness itself. There is no separate CEO in charge of these processes. They are simply happening, arising, and ceasing in response to causes and conditions. The self is a convenient label we apply to this flowing stream, just as we apply the label river to a moving body of water. But there is no static river entity separate from the flow of the water. To understand anatta is to realize the truth of the hollow bamboo. Our strength and freedom come not from having a solid, dense ego core, but from the spaciousness of being an open process. When there is no fixed, solid self to defend, who is there to be insulted? When there is no permanent entity to aggrandize, what is the meaning of failure? The terror of the ego, its constant fear of being diminished or destroyed, is seen to be the fear of something that was never really there in the first place. It is the ultimate vanishing of the snake. To adopt this view, to see the world as impermanent, inherently unsatisfactory when clung to, and empty of a separate self is the very definition of liberation. It is not depressing. It is the end of depression's cause. The old, wrong view is what created the suffering. Believing the rope was a snake was the cause of the terror. Believing that life should be permanent and that you are a solid self destined for lasting happiness through acquisition is the cause of all your disappointment and anxiety. Right view is the act of aligning yourself with the truth. It is the great exhale, the release of the impossible burden of fighting reality. It is the beginning of sanity. It is the lantern that allows us to see the path clearly, illuminating the harmless ropes and phantom snakes for what they are. But a map, however perfect, is only the beginning. Once we see the landscape clearly, we must consciously and intentionally choose our direction. We must align our hearts and minds with our newfound vision. This leads us directly to the next step on the path, the cultivation of right intention. If right view is the accurate map that shows us the true landscape of reality, then right intention is the act of setting our compass. A map is a passive object. It shows you where the rivers and mountains are, but it cannot tell you where to go. The journey requires a conscious choice of direction, a deliberate orientation of the heart. This is the role of right intention, or sammasankappa. It is the second step on the path, the rudder that steers the ship of our life. Having seen the world with clarity, we now consciously choose to direct the formidable energy of our thoughts, not towards further entanglement and suffering, but towards freedom, healing, and peace. It is the pivot upon which our inner world turns from a place of reaction to a place of creation. Every moment of our lives, an intention is present. Before every word we speak, before every action we take, there is a subtle or overt motivation, a seed from which the action grows. For most of us, these intentions operate in the shadows, unexamined and automatic. They spring from our conditioned habits and our flawed map of the world. We are driven by the intention to grasp for pleasure, the intention to push away pain, and the intention to defend and inflate our fragile sense of self. These unconscious intentions are the architects of our own prisons. Right intention is the revolutionary act of turning on the light. It is the choice to become a conscious gardener of the mind, to deliberately select the seeds we plant rather than allowing the weeds of our conditioning to grow wild. It is the understanding that the entire trajectory of our lives is determined by the quality of our intentions. The Buddha described 3 distinct types of right intention, 3 wholesome directions in which we can point our minds. Together, they form a comprehensive reorientation of the heart, moving us away from the patterns that cause suffering and towards those that create peace. The first is the intention of renunciation, or more gently, the intention of letting go. In our culture, The word renunciation sounds severe, suggesting a life of grim self-denial. But in this context, it means the very opposite. It is an act of profound self-kindness. It is the wisdom that recognizes that our suffering comes not from the world itself, but from our clinging, grasping, and attachment to it. It is the conscious intention to relax the monkey's fist. This is not about renouncing joy. It is about renouncing the clinging that turns joy into anxiety. It is the intention to find happiness not in accumulation, but in spaciousness. In daily life, this is the intention to let go of the need to be right in an argument, releasing the tense grip of our ego. It is the intention to let go of old resentments, freeing ourselves from the poison of carrying the past. It is the intention to let go of our obsessive craving for the next purchase or the next promotion, recognizing that our peace does not reside there. It is a gentle, continuous turning away from the complexity and burden of grasping and turning towards the lightness and freedom of a contented heart. The second is the intention of goodwill, or loving kindness. This is the direct antidote to the poison of anger, resentment, and ill will that so often contaminates our minds. The intention of goodwill, or avyapada, is the active, conscious cultivation of a baseline of friendliness towards all of life. It begins, crucially, with ourselves. It is the intention to stop the relentless inner critic and to treat ourselves with the same warmth and understanding we would offer a dear friend. From that foundation, we extend this intention outwards. It is the deliberate wish for the happiness and well-being of others, our loved ones, our colleagues, strangers on the street, and even those who cause us difficulty. This is not a sentimental emotion that we must force ourselves to feel. It is a firm, steady orientation of the mind. When someone frustrates us, our default intention is often one of anger and judgment. The practice of right intention is to notice this and gently shift towards an intention of goodwill. May they be free from the stress that is causing them to act this way. May they find peace. This does not mean we approve of harmful actions. It means we choose to fill our own minds with warmth rather than bitterness, which is a transformative act of self-preservation. It changes our inner climate from one of cold hostility to one of radiant warmth, melting the ice of our own isolation. The third is the intention of harmlessness, or compassion. Known as avihisa, this is the unwavering resolve to not cause harm to any living being in thought, word, or deed. While goodwill is the wish for others to be happy, compassion is the wish for them to be free from suffering. It is the heart's response to the clear seeing of dukkha. It arises from the empathetic understanding that every being, just like us, wants to avoid pain. This intention makes us sensitive to the impact of our actions. It guides us to be gentle, to be considerate, to walk through the world with a light footprint. It is the gentle hand that guides the bend of the bamboo, ensuring that our flexibility does not become a careless indifference. When we see suffering, instead of turning away in fear or judging from a distance, the intention of harmlessness moves us to connect, to understand, and to help if we can. It is the recognition of our profound interconnectedness that the harm we do to others is ultimately harm we do to ourselves, and the kindness we offer returns to us in the form of a more peaceful heart. There is a beautiful story, often attributed to the Cherokee people, that perfectly illustrates the power of right intention. An elder is teaching his grandson about life. He says, "A fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is evilly as anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego." He continued, "The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too." The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." Our intentions are the food. Every moment offers a choice. When we entertain thoughts of grasping and getting, we are feeding the wolf of greed. When we dwell on resentment and replay old hurts, we are feeding the wolf of anger. When we consciously choose to cultivate letting go, goodwill, and harmlessness, we are feeding the wolf of peace. Right intention is the deliberate, mindful act of choosing which wolf to nourish. This is not a one-time decision, but a moment-to-moment practice. It is the practice of setting a clear intention when you wake in the morning. Today, may I feed the wolf of peace. It is the practice of pausing, even for a split second before you speak or send that email, and asking, what is the true intention behind this action? It is the gentle but firm discipline of redirecting the mind over and over again when it strays down the familiar, worn-out paths of negativity. It is the conscious steering of your inner world, taking the clear light of right view and using it to illuminate the path you wish to walk. But intentions, no matter how pure, remain dormant until they are brought to life. They are seeds that must be planted in the soil of the world through our actions. Our inner compass, now set by right intention, must guide our feet, our hands, and our voices. This is where the path moves from the internal realm of seeing and thinking into the external world of speaking and acting. A map, however true, and a compass, however well set, are of little use until the journey begins. The path must be walked. Right view gives us the map, and right intention sets our compass towards peace. But it is in the vast and complex domain of our daily lives that the practice truly comes alive. This is the realm of sila, or ethical conduct, the second great training of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is here that we translate our inner aspirations into tangible reality through our words, our actions, and even the way we earn our living. Sila is not a rigid code of morality imposed from the outside. It is a conscious and compassionate practice of aligning our external life with our internal wisdom. It is the understanding that a mind cannot find deep peace if the life it inhabits is filled with the chaos, guilt, and conflict born from harmful behavior. It is the act of creating a peaceful outer world to support the cultivation of a peaceful inner world. The first branch of this ethical training is right speech, or samavacha. We live submerged in an ocean of words. We speak, we write, we text, we post, we comment. Words are the very fabric of our relationships in our society, yet we often treat them as if they are weightless and disposable, forgetting their immense power to either heal or wound. Right speech is the practice of wielding this power with wisdom and compassion. It asks us to become mindful gatekeepers of our own mouths and keyboards, ensuring that the words we release into the world are agents of peace, not conflict. This practice is traditionally broken down into 4 guidelines. First, we practice speaking truthfully and refraining from false speech. This goes deeper than simply not telling lies. It is a commitment to integrity. It means not exaggerating for effect, not spreading rumors or gossip that we cannot verify, and not participating in the propagation of misinformation, which has become a pervasive poison in our digital age. It is about making our word a bond so that others and we ourselves can trust what we say. Second, we refrain from slanderous or divisive speech. This is the practice of refusing to use words as wedges to drive people apart. It is the conscious choice to step away from the toxic allure of gossip, backbiting, and harsh criticism of those who are not present. It is the active intention to not speak of others in ways we would not want them to speak of us. In a world increasingly defined by political and social polarization, this practice is a radical act of peacemaking. It means resisting the urge to demonize those with different views and instead using language that seeks to build bridges and foster understanding. Third, we refrain from harsh speech. This addresses not just what we say, but how we say it. Harsh speech includes yelling, insults, sarcasm intended to wound, and any form of verbal abuse. It is the language of anger and aggression. The practice of right speech invites us to communicate with gentleness, even when we are disagreeing or setting firm boundaries. It is the choice to speak to others, including our own family, with the same respect and kindness we might offer a revered guest. It understands that a soft word can melt a hard heart, while a harsh word only hardens it further. Finally, we refrain from idle chatter. This may seem minor, but it is a profound practice of mental conservation. So much of our conversation is meaningless, filler, time-wasting gossip that serves only to agitate the mind and distract us from what is real. To practice this aspect of right speech is to value the power of silence and to speak with purpose, to share what is useful, true, and beneficial, and to be comfortable letting the rest go. The second branch of ethical conduct is right action, or samma kammanta. If our words are one expression of our inner state, our physical actions are an even more direct and powerful manifestation. Right action is the practice of ensuring our bodily conduct is in harmony with our intention of harmlessness. It is classically defined by three main precepts. The first is to refrain from taking life. At its most basic level, this is a commitment to not intentionally kill any living creature. But its spirit extends much further. It is a cultivation of a deep reverence for life in all its forms. It means being a careful driver, showing kindness to animals, and being a responsible steward of the natural environment that sustains us all. It is about moving through the world with a gentle presence, recognizing that our actions have consequences for the intricate web of life of which we are a part. The second is to refrain from taking what is not given. This is the practice of honesty and respect for the property of others. It means not stealing, but it also means not taking advantage of people, not plagiarizing the work of others, not cheating on our taxes, and not consuming more than our fair share. It is a practice of integrity, fostering a foundation of trust in our relationships and in our community. The third aspect of right action is to refrain from sexual misconduct. In a modern context, this is a call to bring mindfulness, respect, and deep care into our sexuality. It means ensuring that our sexual expression is not a source of harm for ourselves or for others. It is about cultivating relationships based on mutual consent, honesty, and kindness, rather than exploitation, deception, or coercion. It is the recognition that sexuality is a powerful energy that can create deep connection or profound suffering, and it is our responsibility to guide that energy with wisdom and compassion, honoring the emotional and physical well-being of everyone involved. The final branch of ethical living is right livelihood, or samma ajiva. For most people, our work is the activity that occupies the majority of our waking hours. It is the way we sustain our physical lives. Right livelihood asks us to examine this enormous part of our existence through the lens of our deepest ethical values. It poses a crucial question. Does the way I earn my living contribute to the well-being of the world, or does it contribute to its suffering? Traditionally, this meant avoiding professions that directly caused harm, such as trading in weapons, poisons, intoxicants, or engaging in the buying and selling of human beings or meat. In our complex global economy, the application of this principle requires subtle and honest reflection. It invites us to ask, does my company exploit its workers or damage the environment? Does my role in marketing or advertising depend on creating feelings of inadequacy and craving in others? Am I part of a system that profits from addiction, division, or injustice? This practice is not a demand for everyone to immediately quit their jobs. It is an invitation to bring a new level of ethical awareness to our professional lives. It might mean choosing to work for a company whose values align with our own. It might mean acting as a force for positive change within our current organization. Or it might simply mean carrying out our duties with the utmost integrity, kindness, and respect for our colleagues and customers. It is about ensuring that the very act of sustaining our life does not violate the core intention of our practice, to reduce, not increase, the amount of suffering in the world. Together, right speech, right action, and right livelihood form the unshakable foundation of the path. They are not a restrictive cage of moral rules, but a liberating practice that simplifies our lives and calms our hearts. When we live in a way that is truthful, kind, and harmless, we have nothing to hide and nothing to fear. We are free from the inner turmoil of guilt, remorse, and the anxiety of being discovered. Our external life becomes a reflection of the peace we seek within. This ethical foundation creates a stable, tranquil ground upon which we can begin the even deeper work of training the mind itself. For even when our outer life is in order, the mind can still be a raging storm. Having calmed the world around us, we must now learn to calm the world within. This requires the development of strength, focus, and unwavering awareness, the tools of mental discipline. With our outer world brought into a state of greater harmony through ethical conduct, we turn our gaze inward. We arrive at the very heart of the path, the training of the mind itself. This is the domain of samadhi, or mental discipline. If our life is a garden, we have, through ethical living, built a strong fence to protect it. Now, we must learn to work with the soil, to pull the weeds, and to cultivate the flowers. Our minds, left to their own devices, are often chaotic places, overgrown with the weeds of worry, distraction, and negativity. The training in mental discipline provides us with the essential tools of the master gardener, allowing us to transform this inner landscape from a place of turmoil into a sanctuary of peace and clarity. The first two of these profound tools, working hand in hand, are right effort and right mindfulness. Let us begin with right effort, or samma vayama. The word effort can be misleading for us. In our culture of relentless striving, it often conjures images of forceful, aggressive, white-knuckled exertion. We think of pushing through pain and gritting our teeth to achieve a goal. But this is not the nature of right effort. A beautiful story from the Buddha's life perfectly illustrates its quality. A monk named Sona was practicing with extreme, ascetic zeal, driving himself to the point of exhaustion and despair, yet finding no peace. The Buddha, knowing Sona had been a famous musician before becoming a monk, asked him a simple question. Sona, when you were a lute player, what happened if the strings of your instrument were too tight? Sona replied, Venerable sir, they would snap. The Buddha then asked, and what happened if the strings were too loose? They would not make a sound, Sona answered. In the same way, Sona, the Buddha explained, energy that is stretched too tight leads to restlessness, and energy that is too slack leads to laziness. The path is found in the middle, in tuning the instrument of your mind with an effort that is balanced, steady, and wise. Right effort, therefore, is not a violent battle against the mind, but a skillful, gentle, and sustainable application of energy. It is the wisdom of the gardener who knows when to be firm and when to be gentle. This wise effort is directed into 4 specific tasks, the 4 great efforts that encompass the entire project of mental cultivation. First, there is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. A wise gardener does not wait for the garden to be overrun with weeds before taking action. They protect it. In our minds, this means guarding the senses. We begin to notice what we feed our minds. Does scrolling through this particular social media feed plant seeds of envy and despair? Does engaging in this type of conversation stir up anger or anxiety? The effort here is a gentle turning away, a conscious choice to not water the seeds of negativity before they have a chance to sprout. Second, there is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Despite our best efforts, weeds will still appear. When a state like anger, jealousy, or obsessive worry takes root in the mind, we have a choice. Our habit is either to indulge it, letting it grow wild, or to furiously try to suppress it, which often gives it more strength. Right effort is the skillful middle way. We acknowledge the thought without judgment. Anger is present. And then we gently redirect our attention, like leading a child by the hand away from something dangerous. We let the negative state wither for lack of fuel. The third task shifts from defense to offense. It is the effort to cultivate wholesome states that have not yet arisen. A garden is not defined merely by the absence of weeds. It is defined by the beauty of the flowers we choose to plant. This is the active, joyful work of introducing states like kindness, compassion, gratitude, and generosity into our minds. It can be as simple as taking a moment to deliberately bring to mind 3 things you are grateful for, or consciously sending a silent wish of well-being to a person you will meet today. We are actively planting the seeds of beauty and peace in the soil of our minds. Finally, there is the 4th task, the effort to maintain and nourish wholesome states that are already present. When a beautiful flower blooms, the wise gardener tends to it, giving it the water and sunlight it needs to flourish. Similarly, when a moment of genuine peace, joy, or connection arises in our experience, we often rush past it. This practice encourages us to pause, to savor that wholesome state. We allow the feeling of peace to permeate our body and mind, strengthening its presence, deepening its roots. By doing so, we are literally rewiring our brains, making peace and joy more accessible and familiar states of being. But how do we know when a weed has sprouted? How do we recognize a flower when it blooms? How do we know if the string of our effort is too tight or too loose? All of this requires the master tool, the indispensable companion to right effort, This tool is right mindfulness, or samasati. If right effort is the gentle hand that gardens the mind, right mindfulness is the clear eye that directs the hand. It is the quality of awareness that allows us to see what is actually happening in our inner world so that we can apply our effort wisely. Right mindfulness can be defined simply as paying attention in the present moment, on purpose, and non-judgmentally. Each part of this definition is vital. We are deliberately paying attention, directing the spotlight of our awareness. We are doing it in the present moment, not lost in replays of the past or rehearsals for the future. And most crucially, we are doing it non-judgmentally. This means we observe our own experience with a spirit of gentle, impartial curiosity. We watch our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations arise and pass away without labeling them as good or bad, right or wrong, me or not me. We adopt the attitude of a kind scientist observing the weather, not a harsh judge delivering a verdict on it. Imagine you are sitting peacefully on a grassy hill, overlooking a busy road. The road is your mind, and the vehicles are your thoughts and feelings. A flashy red sports car of anger speeds by. A slow, heavy bus of sadness rumbles past. A swarm of buzzing motorcycles of anxiety zips in and out of the lanes. To be lost in thought, as we usually are, is to be down on that road, chasing after a vehicle, getting run over by another, completely caught in the chaos of the traffic. Mindfulness is the act of remaining on the hill. From this vantage point, you can see all the traffic clearly. You note, there is the red car of anger. Now it is gone. Here comes the bus of sadness. You observe it all without having to jump into the road. You don't have to own the vehicles or identify with them. You are the watcher, the spacious, calm awareness in which the traffic of the mind is flowing. This non-reactive observation is the secret to freedom. It is here that we see the perfect, beautiful synergy between right effort and right mindfulness. They are two wings of the same bird. Mindfulness is the knowing, effort is the doing. Mindfulness sees, a weed of resentment has just sprouted in the garden. Right effort then skillfully acts. I will gently let go of this thought and not feed it. Mindfulness feels, the lute string of my practice is too tight. My body is tense and my mind is strained. Right effort wisely responds. I will soften my body, relax my intention, and bring a gentle ease to this moment. Mindfulness notices, a small flower of gratitude is blooming in my heart. Right effort joyfully says, let me tend to this, let me savor this feeling, and allow it to grow. Without mindfulness, our effort is blind and clumsy, like a gardener pulling up flowers and watering weeds in the dark. Without effort, mindfulness can remain a passive observation without leading to transformation. Together, they form the dynamic, living heart of mental cultivation. They are the skills we must develop to tame the wildness of our minds and turn it into our greatest ally. And like any skill, they grow stronger with practice. The most foundational and universal training ground for this practice is as close to us as our own breath. Having cultivated a life of greater outer peace through ethical conduct, and having understood the skillful balance of effort required to garden the mind, we now arrive at the practice itself. We need a training ground, a simple, reliable place where we can apply right effort and develop right mindfulness. This training ground is not in a distant monastery or a sacred text. It is as close as the air we breathe. The most ancient, direct, and profoundly effective method for calming the mind and developing clarity is the practice of anapanasati, or mindfulness of breathing. The breath is the perfect object for meditation. It is always with us, from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. It costs nothing and requires no special equipment. Most importantly, the breath is always and only in the present moment. You cannot breathe in the past or in the future. To be aware of your breath is to be anchored in the here and now, the only place where life is actually lived. Before we begin, it is essential to set the stage with gentleness and care. First, find a posture that embodies both dignity and ease. You do not need to force your body into a painful or unfamiliar position. If you are comfortable on a cushion on the floor, that is fine. But it is equally fine to sit upright in a chair, with your feet flat on the floor. The key is to keep your spine relatively straight, but not rigid, like a noble stalk of bamboo, allowing energy and breath to flow freely. Let your hands rest comfortably in your lap or on your knees. You can gently close your eyes, or, if you prefer, leave them slightly open with a soft, unfocused gaze directed towards the floor a few feet in front of you. Take a moment to feel your body sitting. Feel the weight of it, the points of contact with the chair or cushion, and then gently set your intention. The goal for the next few minutes is not to achieve a state of bliss, not to stop your thoughts, not to have a mystical experience. The intention is simply to be present, to bring a kind, curious awareness to the simple reality of your own breath. Now, bring your attention to the physical sensation of breathing. Without trying to change it or control it in any way, simply notice the breath as it enters and leaves your body. For some, the sensation is most vivid at the tip of the anointing, a subtle coolness on the in-breath and a slight warmth on the out-breath. For others, the feeling is more pronounced in the chest, the gentle expansion and contraction. Or perhaps you feel it most deeply in the abdomen, the soft rise and fall of your belly. There is no right or wrong place to feel it. Simply choose one of these spots, your primary anchor point, and let your attention rest there, as a butterfly might rest on a flower. Feel the entire journey of a single breath, the beginning of the in-breath, the middle, and the end, the brief pause that follows, and then the beginning of the out-breath, the middle, and the end. Just this. In and out, rising and falling. There is nothing else you need to do. You are simply watching, observing the natural rhythm of your own life force. It will not take long, perhaps only a few seconds, before you discover the truth about your own mind. It wanders, a thought will arise, a memory, a plan for tomorrow, a line from a song, a sudden worry. Your attention will leave the breath and, like a curious dog following a new scent, it will follow the thought. Please hear this, for it is the most important instruction. This is not a mistake. The mind wandering is not a sign that you are a bad meditator or that you are failing. It is simply the nature of an untrained mind. The mind's job is to think, just as the ear's job is to hear. The goal of this practice is not to have a perfectly silent, empty mind. The true practice, the moment of awakening, happens in the instant you realize your mind has wandered. That moment of aha, I'm no longer with my breath, I'm thinking about my emails, is a moment of pure mindfulness. It is a small victory. The practice is what you do next. With the utmost kindness and patience, as if you were guiding a lost puppy back home, you gently acknowledge the thought without judgment, and then you softly, firmly, escort your attention back to the physical sensation of the breath. This process will repeat itself dozens, perhaps hundreds of times in a single session. The mind will wander, you will notice, and you will gently return. This is the practice. Every single return is a repetition, a push-up for the muscle of your attention and your compassion. A beautiful traditional metaphor describes this process perfectly. Your mind is like a wild, energetic young monkey, full of restless energy, always chattering and jumping from one tree branch of thought to another. To try and chain this monkey down with force will only make it scream and struggle and become more agitated. In this practice, the meditation posture is the clearing in the forest where we will gently work with this monkey. The breath is the sturdy, silent post planted firmly in the center of the clearing. The rope of our attention is what we use to gently tie the monkey to the post. At first, the monkey will be frantic. It will pull at the rope, running to its full length in every direction, trying to escape back into the jungle of distraction. Our job is not to yank the monkey back violently. Our job is to patiently, gently, persistently keep the rope connected to the post. Over time, with consistent practice, something amazing happens. The monkey begins to realize that the post is safe, that its struggles are futile and exhausting. It begins to settle down. It might still wander to the end of the rope, but its movements become less frantic. Eventually, it may even come to sit peacefully at the base of the post, content and calm. This is how we tame the mind, not with force, not with aggression, but with gentle, patient, unwavering persistence. In doing this, we fundamentally change our relationship with our thoughts. We are conditioned to believe that we are our thoughts. If an angry thought appears, we become an angry person. If a sad thought appears, we become a sad person. We are completely identified with and swept away by the stream of our mental chatter. This practice creates space, By anchoring to the breath, we move from being in the stream to sitting on the bank and watching it flow by. We see a thought arise, we see it stay for a moment, and we see it pass away. We realize that thoughts are just transient mental events, like clouds passing in the sky. They are not us, and they do not have to control us. This seeing is the beginning of profound freedom. The breath is our anchor, our home base, our sanctuary, in the midst of the sometimes stormy sea of the mind. It is always there, waiting for us to return. By training ourselves to rest our attention on this simple, life-giving process, we build a foundation of inner stability and calm. With this anchor firmly established, we become far more capable of navigating the larger, more powerful waves that life inevitably sends our way, the turbulent and often overwhelming currents of our own emotions. With the breath as our steady anchor, we have cultivated a small clearing of stability in the often wild landscape of the mind. From this place of grounded presence, we can now turn to face the most powerful and turbulent forces in our inner world, our emotions. Emotions are the weather of the heart. Some days are filled with the bright sunshine of joy and excitement. Other days bring the gathering clouds of sadness, the chilling winds of fear, or the violent thunderstorms of anger. Our entire lives are often spent reacting to this inner weather. We desperately chase the sunshine, trying to cling to pleasant feelings, and we run for cover from the storms, doing anything we can to deny, suppress, or distract ourselves from difficult emotions. But what if there was a third way? What if, instead of constantly reacting to the weather, we could learn to become the vast, open, and unshakable sky in which all weather, pleasant and unpleasant, is allowed to arise, unfold, and pass away? This is the practice of bending with the winds of emotion. The fundamental error in our relationship with our emotions is a case of mistaken identity. We believe that our emotions are the problem. We think that anger is bad, fear is weak, and sadness is something to be fixed. The wisdom of mindfulness reveals that the emotions themselves are not the problem. They are simply energy, raw information flowing through our nervous system. They are natural, human responses to life. The true problem, the source of the second arrow, lies in our relationship to these emotions. When a pleasant feeling like joy arises, our habit is to immediately cling to it. We grasp it tightly, thinking, "This is it. I need this to last forever." This very act of clinging introduces an undercurrent of anxiety, a fear of the moment ending, which poisons the joy we are so desperate to preserve. When an unpleasant feeling like anger or sadness arises, our habit is one of violent resistance. We push it away, we condemn it, we numb ourselves. We declare an inner war on our own experience. This resistance is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes immense energy, and the moment we lose focus, the ball shoots up with even greater force. Our resistance doesn't eliminate the emotion, it intensifies it, trapping its energy within us and prolonging our suffering. The path of mindfulness offers a radical alternative to this endless cycle of clinging and resisting. It is the path of acknowledging, of allowing, of meeting our emotions with a courageous and compassionate curiosity. This practice can be understood as a sequence of gentle, healing steps. The first step is to recognize. This is the pure function of mindfulness. When a strong emotion arises, instead of being immediately swept away by it, we simply notice its presence. We mentally note with a neutral scientific tone, "Ah, anger is here," or "This is the feeling of sadness," or "Fear is present in the mind." This simple act of naming is incredibly powerful. It immediately creates a sliver of space. It begins to separate our identity from the emotion. You are not angry. You are the one who is aware of anger. You are not sadness. You are the one who is experiencing sadness. The second step, and perhaps the most courageous, is to allow. Instead of our habitual reaction of pushing the feeling away, we give it permission to exist. We drop the inner struggle. We can say to ourselves, "It's okay. This feeling can be here for a little while." This does not mean we like the feeling or that we want to wallow in it. It means we are ceasing our futile war against what is already a fact of our present moment experience. We are no longer tensing like the rigid oak tree against the wind. We are choosing to be the bamboo, allowing the energy of the wind to flow through us. This act of allowing, of non-resistance, immediately reduces the tension of the second arrow. It is a profound act of self-compassion. Once we have allowed the emotion to be present without resistance, we can move to the third step, to investigate with kindness. We bring a gentle curiosity to the experience, not to the story behind it, but to the raw, physical reality of it. We ask ourselves, where do I feel this emotion in my body? Is anger a heat in the face and a tightness in the fists? Is sadness a heavy weight in the chest? Is fear a cold knot in the pit of the stomach? We explore these physical sensations not to analyze them, but simply to feel them directly, without the layer of mental chatter. This grounds us in the body and prevents the mind from spinning out into catastrophic stories, which is the fuel that keeps most difficult emotions burning. We are moving our attention from the why of the emotion to the what of its direct, physical presence. The fourth step is one of nurturing or non-identification. As we stay present with the physical sensations of the emotion, we notice something remarkable. They are not solid, they are not static. They are patterns of energy that are constantly shifting, changing, and moving. The tightness in the chest softens, the heat in the face cools, the knot in the stomach loosens. If we continue to watch without feeding the emotion with more reactive thoughts, it will eventually exhaust its own energy and dissolve, just as a wave crests and dissolves back into the ocean. In this step, we nurture ourselves with compassion for the difficulty of the experience, and we recognize the ultimate truth. We are not the emotion, we are not the wave. We are the vast, deep ocean of awareness in which the wave of emotion has arisen and is now passing away. In the Buddhist tradition, the great embodiment of compassion, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, is described as the one who hears the cries of the world. The image is of one who can be fully present for immense suffering, not by blocking it out, but by having an awareness so vast and open that it can hold the pain without being broken by it. When we practice mindfulness of our own emotions, we are learning to become our own Avalokiteshvara. We are learning to listen to our own inner cries with a spacious, kind, and accepting heart. And this very act of compassionate listening is what allows for true healing. The profound gift of this entire practice is the creation of a sacred pause. Before, a trigger would occur, an emotion would arise, and we would react instantly and automatically. An insult led to an angry retort. A fear led to avoidance. A craving led to indulgence. There was no space, no freedom. Mindfulness creates that space. Now, the trigger occurs and the emotion arises. But in that space, we recognize, we allow, we feel. And in that pause between stimulus and reaction, we find our power. We have a choice. We are no longer slaves to our conditioned habits. We can choose to respond from a place of wisdom, clarity, and compassion, rather than from a place of blind reactivity. This space is the difference between bondage and freedom. As we practice meeting our emotions in this way, we begin to experience their true nature directly. We see for ourselves that they are not solid, permanent fixtures of our personality. They are fleeting, transient, and impersonal energies. This direct insight into the fluid, ever-changing nature of our inner world serves as a gateway to understanding one of the most fundamental laws of all existence. A truth that, when seen clearly, liberates the heart completely. The universal truth of impermanence. With the anchor of the breath holding us steady, we have learned to be present for the powerful weather of our emotions. In doing so, we have made a remarkable discovery. Our feelings, no matter how solid and overwhelming they seem, are not permanent fixtures. They are transient energies that arise, express themselves, and dissolve, like clouds moving through the vast sky of awareness. This direct insight is our gateway to understanding one of the most profound and liberating truths at the heart of Buddhist wisdom. A truth that, once seen clearly, changes everything. This is the wisdom of anicca, the universal law of impermanence. To understand impermanence is to understand the fundamental rhythm of the universe, the secret pulse of life itself. It is the recognition that everything, without exception, is in a constant state of flow, of change, of flux. We can see the truth of anicca on a grand scale. The seasons turn in their endless cycle. Mountains are slowly weathered down to sand. Stars are born and die in the vastness of space. We intellectually accept these truths because they happen on a timeline so large that they don't feel personally threatening. But impermanence is not just a cosmic law. It is the intimate reality of our own lives. Our bodies are in a constant state of change. With every breath, cells are dying and being replaced. The body we have today is not the same body we had 7 years ago, nor the one we will have 7 years from now. Our relationships are also a flowing river. Friendships that once seemed essential can drift apart. Romantic love transforms and matures. Our children grow from helpless infants into independent adults. Our possessions, the things we believe we own, are all subject to decay. The new car gets its first scratch. The favorite sweater wears thin. The house requires constant repair. Nothing stays the same. And nowhere is this truth more vivid than within our own minds. As we have seen in our practice, our thoughts are the most fleeting of phenomena, appearing from nowhere and vanishing just as quickly. Our moods and emotional states are as changeable as the weather. A moment of joy can be replaced by a pang of anxiety in an instant. A state of calm focus can give way to a flurry of restless distraction. Nothing is static. Everything is a dance. This is the nature of reality. The core of our suffering arises from a simple, tragic conflict. We desire permanence in a world that is fundamentally impermanent. We try to build a solid, unchanging home on the shifting sands of time. This is the ultimate futile project. Our clinging to what we want to keep and our resistance to what we want to get rid of is a constant, exhausting struggle against the very flow of life itself. We are like a person standing in a powerful river, shouting at the water to stop. The river simply flows on, and our struggle against it only creates tension, frustration, and exhaustion. This is the friction of dukkha. There is a poignant story that illustrates this truth with heartbreaking clarity. A young woman named Kisa Gotami lived in the time of the Buddha. Her life was filled with joy after the birth of her first and only child. But one day, the child fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami was driven mad with grief. Unable to accept the reality of her loss, she picked up the small body of her son and wandered through her village, begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some mocked her, others pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man saw her desperation and guided her to the Buddha. The Buddha looked upon her with immense compassion. He did not dismiss her plea. He told her, "I can make the medicine you seek, but to do so, I require one ingredient. You must bring me a single mustard seed from a house in this village where no one, not a parent, a spouse, a child, or a servanthus ever died." Kisa Gotami's heart soared with hope. A mustard seed was such a simple thing to find. She began going from door to door. At the first house, a kind woman said, "Of course I have a mustard seed for you." But when Kisa Gotami asked if death had ever visited the home, the woman's face fell. "Alas," she said, "I lost my husband just last year." At the next house, the story was the same. "The living are few, but the dead are many. Please do not remind us of our deepest grief." She went to every house in the village, and the response was always the same. Everyone was willing to share what they had, but no house was untouched by the hand of death. As the sun began to set, the profound truth of her quest dawned on her. She had thought her suffering was a unique and personal affliction, a cruel punishment singled out for her alone. Now, she saw that loss was not her private sorrow, but the universal condition of all life. Her personal grief connected her to the shared experience of all humanity. With this deep understanding, she was able to let go of her desperate clinging, find a quiet place to bury her son, and return to the Buddha, not with a mustard seed, but with a heart that had been broken open to the truth of anicca. To see impermanence clearly is not to fall into despair. It is the very opposite. It is the doorway to profound appreciation and unshakable resilience. When we truly know that every moment is fleeting, we begin to treat each one as precious. We listen more deeply to the words of a loved one, knowing that the opportunity may not always be there. We taste our food with greater attention. We appreciate a simple moment of quiet peace, knowing it is a temporary gift. Our clinging is replaced by cherishing. Furthermore, the wisdom of impermanence becomes our greatest ally in difficult times. When we are caught in a storm of grief, anxiety, or physical pain, the knowledge that this too shall pass is not a hollow platitude. It is a deep, comforting truth. It gives us the strength to endure, knowing that no state, however painful, is permanent. It prevents us from solidifying our pain into a permanent identity. This is the wisdom of the bamboo. The mighty oak tree resists the wind, believing in the permanence of its own strength. Its rigidity is a denial of impermanence, and so it cracks and breaks. The bamboo survives because it understands the law of anicca instinctively. It does not fight the wind. It bends, it yields, it flows with the impermanent force, knowing that the storm itself is a passing phenomenon. In its yielding, it finds its true, resilient strength. This deep, experiential understanding of impermanence, that everything we experience is a constantly changing flow, leads us to the most profound and personal question on the entire spiritual path. If my body is changing, if my feelings are changing, if my thoughts are changing, if my consciousness is changing, then who am I? What is this self that I am so desperately trying to protect and promote? If everything is in flux, where is the permanent entity that I call me? This question leads us directly into the hollow core of the bamboo, to the liberating and radical insight of non-self. Having journeyed through the landscapes of our emotional lives and witnessed the universal truth of impermanence, we arrive at the very center of the path. Here we must ask the most intimate question of all. We have seen that our bodies are in constant flux, our feelings are fleeting, and our thoughts are like sparks from a fire. But what of the one who is witnessing all of this? Who is this I that feels, thinks, and experiences? For our entire lives, we have operated on the assumption that there is a permanent, solid, unchanging self at our Korea, little person inside, who is the owner of our experiences and the director of our lives. The wisdom of the bamboo now invites us to look directly at this assumption, to investigate it with the same clear-eyed honesty we brought to our emotions. This investigation leads to the most radical, challenging, and ultimately the most liberating insight of the Buddhist path, the truth of anatta, or non-self. Let us be clear from the outset what this does not mean. Anatta does not mean that you do not exist. It is not a doctrine of annihilation that claims you are a walking void. You are here, reading these words, breathing, thinking, feeling. The teaching of non-self is far more subtle and profound. It suggests that what you think you are is an illusion. The idea of a separate, solid, continuous self or soul that exists independently from the rest of the world is a mental construction, a deeply ingrained story we tell ourselves. The practice of insight is to see through this story. When you look for this unchanging me, can you find it? Is it in your body? Your body is an ever-changing collection of cells, entirely dependent on food, water, and air. It gets sick, it ages, it will one day dissolve. It cannot be the permanent, independent self. Is the self your feelings? We have seen that feelings are like the weather, constantly shifting and unreliable. They cannot be the core of your being. Is it your thoughts? Thoughts are even more ephemeral, flickering in and out of awareness. You cannot be a thought, so where is this self to be found? When we search for it honestly, we find not a solid entity, but a dynamic, flowing process. A timeless dialogue from an ancient text beautifully illustrates this investigation. A Greek king named Melinda, a man of great intellect, sought out a Buddhist sage named Nagasena to challenge him on this very point. After introductions, the king asked Nagasena what his name was. The sage replied that he was known as Nagasena, but this was merely a convenient designation, a name for the collection of parts, and that in an ultimate sense, no permanent person could be found. The king was incredulous. He pointed to his own magnificent chariot and used it as an argument. "Reverend sir," the king challenged, "if there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes and takes this food? Look at my chariot. Is the chariot the long pole that connects to the horses?" "No, your majesty," Nagasena replied. "Is it the axle, the wheels, the frame, the reins?" To each question, Nagasena calmly answered no. The king, believing he had trapped the sage, triumphantly asked, "Then is the chariot all of these parts combined?" "No, your majesty." "Then is it something else, separate from all these parts?" "No, your majesty." The king was flustered. "Then, sir, you are speaking a falsehood. There is no chariot." Nagasena then gently turned the question back on the king. "Your majesty, you are a great king. How did you arrive here today?" "In a chariot," the king replied. Then show me this chariot, Nagasena requested, repeating the king's own questions. Is it the pole, the wheels, the axle? The king was forced to admit that the chariot was none of these individual parts, nor was it something separate from them. He finally understood. Chariot, Nagasena explained, is simply the name we give to the functioning assembly of all those parts. It is a concept, a convenient label. It has a conventional reality, but no ultimate, independent existence. Just so, Your Majesty, Nagasena concluded. Nagasena is the label we give to this collection of body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. When they are all working together, we use the convenient name person, but in the absolute sense, no permanent, separate self can be found. This is the hollow core of the bamboo. We believe our strength lies in being solid, in having a dense, heavy, unshakable ego. We spend our lives polishing, promoting, and defending this solid self. It is this self that feels insulted when criticized. It is this self that is terrified of failure because it diminishes its story. It is this self that clings to pleasure and wages war on pain. It is this self that is paralyzed by the fear of its own death. But the wisdom of anatta reveals that this solid self is a phantom. It is a story we have told ourselves for so long that we have mistaken it for the truth. The bamboo's strength comes precisely from its emptiness. It is flexible, resilient, and light because it is hollow. Our own liberation comes from realizing this same truth within ourselves. When we begin to see through the illusion of the separate self, the heavy burden we have been carrying our whole lives begins to dissolve. There is no solid target for life's arrows to hit. There is no fragile ego to be constantly defended. There is a newfound lightness, a spaciousness, a profound sense of relief. This insight does not lead to a cold, disconnected nihilism. It leads to the deepest possible connection with all of life. The illusion of a separate self is what creates the feeling of isolation, the me against the world mentality. When we see that we are not a solid noun, but a flowing verb, not an isolated thing, but an interconnected process, the boundaries between self and other begin to soften. We see that we are not separate from the air we breathe, the food we eat, the people we interact with, or the planet that sustains us. We are a temporary eddy in the great river of existence, inextricably woven into the fabric of everything else. This is not a loss of self, but an expansion into a reality that is infinitely larger, richer, and more mysterious than our small, walled-off ego could ever imagine. We are no longer a lonely wave, terrified of crashing on the shore. We are the entire ocean, expressing itself for a moment as a wave. The freedom this brings is immense. The constant, low-grade anxiety of ego management begins to fade. The need to be right, to win every argument, to always appear intelligent and successful, is seen for the exhausting game that it is. We can listen to others more openly because we are no longer just waiting for our turn to speak and defend our position. We can face challenges with greater courage because failure no longer threatens our core identity. We can even begin to face our own mortality with greater peace, because what is it that will die? A process that was always changing, always flowing, will simply continue to change and flow into a different form. When the walls of the separate self begin to dissolve, the energy that was once consumed in the pointless project of defending those walls is liberated. This vast, liberated energy no longer asks the question, what can I get? Instead, a new question arises, naturally and spontaneously, from the depths of our being. What can I give? With the illusion of separation removed, a profound and unconditional empathy is born. This is the birth of karuna, true compassion. When the solid walls of the separate self begin to dissolve, a profound transformation occurs. The energy we once spent on the exhausting, lifelong project of defending, promoting, and worrying about me is suddenly liberated. This vast reservoir of freed energy does not simply dissipate. It naturally and spontaneously flows outward in a new direction. It is no longer guided by the question, what can I get to secure myself? But by a much deeper inquiry, how can I serve the whole? This outward flowing, liberated energy has a name, karuna. It is the active, trembling state of the heart in the presence of suffering. It is compassion, and it is not a mere sentiment, but one of the most powerful and resilient forces in the universe. In our culture, compassion is often misunderstood. We equate it with pity, or see it as a soft, naive, and bleeding heart emotion that is impractical in a harsh world. But from the perspective of Buddhist wisdom, true compassion is a sign of immense strength, courage, and insight. It is not something we have to artificially generate through force of will. It is the natural warmth that radiates from a mind that is no longer frozen by the illusion of separation. It is born from the direct seeing of dukkha and anatta. When we understand on a deep level that all beings, without exception, are subject to suffering, and that there is no solid other separate from ourselves, the welfare of another being becomes indistinguishable from our own. Their cry of pain resonates within our own heart because we know, intimately, the nature of that cry. Crucially, we must distinguish karuna from pity. Pity comes from a place of perceived superiority. When we pity someone, we look down from our safe, elevated position and say, "Oh, that poor person. I'm so glad I'm not them." Pity creates distance. It reinforces the separation between me, the fortunate one, and you, the unfortunate one. Compassion does the exact opposite. It arises from a felt sense of equality. It says, "I see your pain, and I know what it is to feel pain. Your suffering is not foreign to me. We are in this together." Compassion closes the distance. Pity reinforces the ego. Compassion dissolves it. It is the recognition that we are all in the same boat, navigating the same stormy seas of life, even if our individual waves look different. The journey of cultivating this boundless compassion must begin in the one place we so often overlook, with ourselves. For many of us, especially those raised in cultures that value achievement and self-criticism, being compassionate to ourselves can feel indulgent, weak, or even impossible. We carry a harsh inner judge who tells us we are not good enough, that we must always be better, and that our flaws are evidence of our failure. From a Buddhist perspective, this inner critic is simply another form of violence. It is the ego turning on itself, firing the second, third, and fourth arrows relentlessly. We cannot hope to bring peace to the world if we are at war with ourselves. We cannot offer a cool drink of water to others if our own cup is filled with the poison of self-hatred. Therefore, the practice of self-compassion is not a selfish indulgence. It is the necessary foundation for all authentic compassion. It is the simple act of learning to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would instinctively offer a dear friend who was suffering. When you make a mistake, instead of berating yourself, you can pause, place a hand over your heart, and acknowledge, "This is difficult. I am hurting." You meet your own imperfection, not with condemnation, but with a gentle and forgiving presence. This practice does not make you complacent. It makes you resilient, giving you the emotional stability to learn from your mistakes instead of being crushed by them. A powerful story from the life of the Buddha illustrates the fearless and practical nature of true compassion. In the monastery, there was a monk named Puttagata who had contracted a dreadful skin disease. His body was covered in oozing, suppurating sores, and his robes had become stuck to his skin with dried pus and blood. The stench was so overwhelming that his fellow monks, overcome with disgust, had abandoned him. He lay alone in his own filth, steeped in physical pain and the deeper pain of isolation. The Buddha, in his daily walk through the monastery, heard the monk's faint groans and went to his lodging. Seeing the monk's condition, the Buddha did not show any revulsion. He did not offer mere words of pity from a safe distance. Instead, he began to boil water. With his own hands, he gently began to wash the sick monk's body, softening the caked-on robes and carefully cleaning his wounds. The monk Ananda assisted him. As they tended to his body, the Buddha began to teach him, explaining the impermanent nature of the body and the path to liberation from suffering. The sick monk, his physical agony eased, and his heart overwhelmed by this profound act of unconditional love and acceptance, listened with a completely open mind. In that moment, washed by the hands of the Buddha, he understood the truth of the teachings and attained a deep state of awakening, passing away shortly after in a state of ultimate peace. This story reveals the essence of karuna. It is not afraid of life's messiness. It does not turn away from the unpleasant. It is courageous, willing to move towards suffering with the intention to alleviate it. It is wise, understanding that true healing often requires both practical help and spiritual guidance. The Buddha's act was the ultimate expression of strength, the strength to remain open-hearted and present in the face of immense suffering. This is the quality we cultivate. When we practice compassion, we are training our hearts to be more like the Buddhas. We are learning to keep our hearts open, even when it hurts. And in doing so, we discover that a heart softened by compassion is far more resilient than one hardened by cynicism and fear. A hard heart is brittle, it shatters under pressure. A soft heart is pliable. It can hold the sorrows of the world without breaking. It is the strength of water, which is soft enough to yield yet powerful enough to wear away the hardest stone over time. To cultivate compassion, we begin where we are. We practice by noticing the suffering around us, the frustration of a person in traffic, the weariness of a cashier at the end of a long shift, the sorrow of a friend who has received bad news, and we silently offer them the wish, "May you be free from your suffering." We extend this wish to ourselves when we are struggling. We extend it to those we love, and as our capacity grows, we extend it even to those we find difficult. This practice is a balm for the soul. It dissolves the illusion of our isolation and melts the armor of our own self-centeredness. It is the natural, radiant warmth of a mind that is awakening to its true, interconnected nature. This profound sense of connection does not stop with our personal feelings towards others. It extends to the very way we walk the path. We begin to realize that we are not solitary travelers on this journey. We are part of a vast and supportive grove, and our strength is multiplied when we learn to lean on one another. This leads us to the crucial role of the Sangha, the spiritual community. As our hearts soften with the nourishing power of compassion, we begin to see the world not as a collection of separate individuals, but as a vast, interconnected web of being. We realize that the illusion of the separate self was the source of our deepest isolation. This dawning sense of connection brings us to a vital and often overlooked aspect of the spiritual path, the power and necessity of community. When we look at the bamboo, we see that it does not grow as a solitary stalk in the middle of an empty field. It grows in a grove. It thrives in a dense, whispering community. A single stalk of bamboo is flexible and strong, but its true resilience, its ability to withstand the fiercest typhoons, comes from the collective strength of the grove. Underground, hidden from view, their root systems are intricately intertwined, locking into one another, creating a single, unified foundation that supports every individual stalk. When the wind blows, the entire grove moves as one, each stalk cushioning and sheltering its neighbors. This is the living metaphor for Sangha, the spiritual community. In the Buddhist tradition, taking refuge in the Sangha is considered one of the three jewels, or three refuges, as essential to the path as taking refuge in the Buddha, the principle of awakening, and the Dharma, the teachings. This is a profound statement. It asserts that the journey to awakening is not meant to be a heroic, solitary endeavor. The romantic image of the lone hermit meditating on a mountaintop, while inspiring, is a path fraught with peril for most of us. To walk this path alone is to make an already challenging journey immeasurably more difficult. Without the support of trusted friends and teachers, the mind can easily fall into predictable traps. Small doubts, left to fester in the echo chamber of a solitary mind, can grow into insurmountable obstacles that cause us to abandon the practice altogether. If we have a powerful or blissful experience in meditation, the ego can quietly hijack it, leading to a subtle spiritual pride, a belief that we are somehow special or advanced. A community keeps us humble and grounded in reality. When the path feels arduous and dry, as it inevitably does at times, discouragement can set in. A solitary practitioner has no one to turn to for a word of encouragement, no one to remind them why they started the journey in the first place. The teachings themselves can be subtle and easily misunderstood. Without the mirror of a community to reflect our own understanding, we can get lost in intellectual cul-de-sacs or cling to a wrong view, stunting our own growth. There is a simple and ancient parable that captures the essence of Sangha. A father, lying on his deathbed, called his many children to his side. He asked them to bring him a bundle of sticks tied tightly together. He handed the bundle to his strongest child and said, "Break it." The child strained with all their might, but the bundle would not yield. He passed it to the next child and the next, but none of them could break the bundle. Then the father untied the cord and gave a single stick to each child. "Now," he said, "break it." Each child snapped their individual stick with ease. The father looked at them and said, "Remember this lesson. When you are alone, you are like a single stick, weak and easily broken by the hardships of the world. But when you stand together, united in purpose, you are like this bundle. You are unbreakable. We are the individual sticks. The Sangha is the bundle that gives us unbreakable strength." A healthy Sangha serves several vital functions on the path. It is, first and foremost, a source of profound inspiration. To sit in a room with others who are also committed to waking up, to witness their quiet dedication and their sincere effort, is a powerful motivator. To hear the story of someone who has overcome a great difficulty through their practice gives us the courage to face our own. The Sangha is a living reminder that this path is not an abstract theory, but a possible and deeply rewarding way of life. It is also a wellspring of encouragement and support. A true spiritual community, what is called a Kalyana Mita, or community of noble friends, is a place where we can be vulnerable, where we can speak honestly about our struggles without fear of judgment. When we are lost in self-doubt, a friend on the path can remind us of our inherent goodness and our capacity for wisdom. When we feel like giving up, they can offer the support we need to take the next step. Furthermore, the Sangha acts as an indispensable Dharma mirror. Left to our own devices, we are often blind to our own habits and ego patterns. In our interactions with our spiritual friends, these patterns are reflected back to us with a clarity we could never achieve on our own. A trusted friend might gently point out when we are speaking from a place of pride, or when our compassion is mixed with pity. These reflections are not criticisms, but precious gifts that help us see ourselves more honestly. In this way, our relationships within the Sangha become a part of the practice itself, a living laboratory for developing kindness, patience, and humility. We learn not only from a central teacher, but from the shared wisdom and diverse experiences of every member of the community. In our modern, often fragmented world, the idea of finding a Sangha can seem daunting. But we must understand that the form of the Sangha is less important than its function. A Sangha can certainly be a formal meditation center or a monastery, but it can also be a small group of friends who meet regularly to meditate and discuss their practice. It can be a book club dedicated to exploring spiritual texts with honesty and sincerity. It can even be just one or two trusted Dharma friends with whom you can have open-hearted conversations about the joys and challenges of the path. In the digital age, online communities can also provide a vital sense of connection and shared purpose. What defines a Sangha is not a building or a hierarchy, but the presence of a shared intention to awaken, a commitment to mutual support, and a foundation of respect and trust. To take refuge in the Sangha is to let go of the ego's insistence that I can do this all by myself. It is an act of wisdom and humility. It is the recognition that our interconnectedness is not just a philosophical concept, but a practical source of great power and protection. Just as the intertwined roots of the bamboo grove create a stable ground that allows the entire community to weather the fiercest storms, our connection to a Sangha creates the spiritual stability we need to navigate the powerful winds of modern life. Supported and nourished by this human root system, we are far better equipped to face the relentless pressures of our culture, one of the most powerful of which is the pervasive, all-consuming demand to find happiness through the acquisition of things. Grounded in community, we can now turn to explore a different kind of strength, the radical and liberating strength of simplicity. Grounded in the supportive strength of our community, our human bamboo grove, we are now steady enough to face one of the most powerful and pervasive typhoons of our modern culture, the relentless storm of materialism. From the moment we wake to the moment we sleep, we are swimming in a sea of messages, a constant whispering hypnosis that tells us we are not enough. It tells us that our happiness, our wholeness, our very worth as a person is contingent upon the next acquisition, the car that will bring us freedom, the phone that will bring us connection, the clothing that will bring us admiration, the cream that will bring us youth. This system, this engine of consumerism, is a masterful architect of dukkha. It is designed to create a perpetual state of dissatisfaction, a low-grade ache of inadequacy that can only be soothed momentarily by a purchase. It is the institutionalization of tanha, the unquenchable thirst. It promises a paradise that is always just one transaction away, a paradise that, once reached, immediately vanishes, leaving us thirsty once more. We pursue this promise with great fervor. We work long hours to afford things we don't need. We go into debt. We clutter our homes and our minds, all in the chase of a satisfaction that the objects themselves are incapable of delivering. The thrill of the new purchase fades. The pleasure it provides is fleeting, and we are left with the same restless emptiness we started with. Only now we are also burdened by the object itself, something to be cleaned, stored, protected, and eventually replaced by a newer, better version. This is the very definition of the hamster wheel of suffering, a cycle of craving, acquisition, and disappointment that generates immense stress, anxiety, and a profound sense of meaninglessness. But the way of the bamboo offers a radical alternative, a path not of accumulation, but of liberation. Look at the bamboo. It is the epitome of elegance and strength. Its beauty lies not in ornamentation, but in its clean, uncluttered, simple form. It teaches us a revolutionary truth. Happiness is not found in having more, but in needing less. True wealth is not measured by the abundance of our possessions, but by the shortness of our wants. This is the practice of contentment, known in Pali as santutati. Contentment is not a passive resignation to our circumstances. It is an active, conscious, and joyful practice of appreciating what is already present. It is a deliberate shift in focus from the vast landscape of what we lack to the rich and fertile ground of what we already have. We can cultivate contentment through simple, daily practices. We can begin a practice of gratitude, taking a few moments each day to consciously reflect on the profound gifts we so often take for granted. A healthy body that breathes on its own, clean water to drink, a roof over our head, the love of a friend or a pet. This simple act of noticing shifts the mind from a state of poverty to a state of abundance, without changing our external circumstances one bit. We can also practice mindful consumption. Before making a purchase, we can create a sacred pause. In that pause, we can ask ourselves with honesty, why do I want this? Is this a genuine need? Or am I trying to soothe an inner feeling of boredom, loneliness, or inadequacy? What is the true cost of this object? Not just in money, but in the time I will have to work to pay for it, and the mental space it will occupy. This pause breaks the hypnotic spell of impulsive buying and returns our power to us. A beautiful story is told of a great king who possessed immense power and unimaginable wealth. His treasuries were overflowing with gold and jewels. His armies were vast, and his palaces were wonders of the world. Yet, the king was deeply unhappy. He was burdened by constant worry, the fear of invasion, the stress of managing his kingdom, the anxiety of protecting his vast wealth. He could not sleep peacefully. One evening, from his balcony, he looked out and saw a wandering monk meditating serenely on a riverbank. The monk had nothing. His robe was patched, and his only possession was a simple wooden bowl for begging for his daily meal. Yet, he radiated a sense of peace and utter contentment that the king, in all his splendor, had never experienced. The king went down to the monk and asked, "Venerable sir, I am a king with every comfort and luxury at my command. Yet I am miserable. You have nothing, yet you seem to be the happiest man in the world. What is your secret?" The monk smiled and held up his empty bowl. "Your Majesty," he said, "you believe that happiness comes from filling your life with things. I have found that happiness comes from needing very little. This bowl provides all that I need, so I am never in want. You have 1,000 treasuries, so you live in constant fear of losing them. My happiness is light and portable, while your wealth is a heavy anchor of anxiety. Tell me, who is the richer man?" This story reveals the profound freedom of simplicity. The more we own, the more our possessions own us. They demand our time, our energy, our worry. A life of simplicity is not a life of deprivation. It is a life of liberation. It is a conscious choice to free up our precious life energy from the non-essential so that we can devote it to what truly nourishes the heart and mind, our spiritual practice, our relationships, our creativity, and our service to others. To choose simplicity is an act of strength. It is the courage to defy the relentless cultural pressure that tells us our value is in what we own. It is an act of elegance, a choice to create a life of beauty and meaning that is not dependent on clutter. It is also an act of profound compassion. Our modern culture of overconsumption is not sustainable. It is draining the earth of its resources, polluting our environment, and often relies on the exploitation of less fortunate people around the world. To consume less is a direct and powerful way to practice the intention of harmlessness, reducing our footprint of suffering on the planet. To resist the pull of materialism is not about making ourselves miserable or punishing ourselves. It is about waking up from a collective trance. It is the joyous discovery that we already have enough, that we are enough. The peace we are so desperately seeking in the next purchase is already available within us, covered over by the noise of our own wanting. By practicing simplicity and contentment, we quiet that noise, allowing our innate well-being to shine through. This practice of letting go of our attachment to physical objects is a powerful and concrete way to train the mind. It prepares us, strengthens us, and gives us the skill to begin letting go of things that are even more subtle, more deeply embedded, and more intimately tied to our suffering. Our rigid opinions, our painful memories, and our fixed ideas about who we are. It is the first step in the universal practice of non-attachment. Having learned to loosen our grip on the physical objects that clutter our homes, we now turn to the far more subtle and tenacious forms of clinging that clutter our minds. We have trained in the kindergarten of letting go. Now we enter the deeper study. The practice of simplicity has prepared us to engage with the universal principle of non-attachment. This is not a practice of cold detachment or sterile indifference. It is the art of participating in life fully, passionately, and lovingly, but with an open hand, free from the anxious, fearful grip of the ego. It is learning to let the dead leaves of the past fall away, so that the tree of our life has the space and energy to put forth new growth in the present moment. Our minds are constantly grasping. We cling not just to possessions, but to our opinions, our plans, our memories, our hopes, and our identities. We believe our attachments are the source of our passion and our love, but a closer look reveals they are the source of our anxiety and our suffering. We must make a crucial distinction between love and attachment. Love, in its pure form, is the unconditional wish for another to be happy. It is spacious, freeing, and selfless. Attachment, on the other hand, is rooted in the ego's fear. It says, I need you to be a certain way to make me happy. I need this outcome to feel secure. Attachment is conditional, and it is the hidden engine of jealousy, control, and disappointment. True love allows the bird to fly freely from an open hand. Attachment is the clenched fist that, in its fearful attempt to possess the bird, crushes it. Non-attachment, then, is not the opposite of love. It is the very condition for love in its purest, most liberating form. Consider how we cling to our own views and opinions. We hold on to our political beliefs, our social theories, and our personal philosophies as if they were extensions of our own body. When someone challenges our opinion, we feel it as a personal attack. We argue, we defend, we become rigid, all to protect this fragile mental construct. The practice of non-attachment invites us to hold our views lightly. It is the intellectual humility to recognize that our current understanding might be incomplete or even wrong. It is the willingness to listen with an open mind to a differing perspective, not to win a debate, but to expand our own understanding. It is the freedom from the exhausting need to always be right. We also cling desperately to our plans and our expectations for the future. We create intricate blueprints for how our careers should unfold, how our children should behave, how our vacations should be. We are attached to a specific outcome. Then, when the river of life, in its impermanent and unpredictable way, flows in a different direction, we suffer immensely. We feel frustration, anger, and a sense of personal failure. Non-attachment is the art of steering the ship with skill and intention, while simultaneously letting go of our demand that the weather and the seas conform to our will. It is the wisdom of doing our absolute best, of acting with skill and purpose, and then gracefully accepting the results, whatever they may be. It is the end of our war with reality. Perhaps most subtly, we cling to the past. We carry our history around with us like a heavy sack filled with stones. We cling to our past successes, trying to relive old glories. We cling to our past mistakes, replaying them over and over in a cycle of regret and self-recrimination. And most painfully, we cling to the hurts inflicted upon us by others, nourishing our resentments, keeping the wounds fresh by constantly picking at the scabs. This clinging to the past is what prevents us from living fully in the only moment we ever have, the present. A timeless Zen story perfectly illustrates this human tendency. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. They arrived at a river that was swollen and running swiftly due to recent rains. On the bank stood a beautiful young woman in fine clothing, afraid to cross for fear of being swept away. The monastic vows taken by these monks were strict, and they were forbidden from touching a woman. The junior monk, seeing the situation, was flustered. He stood at a distance, muttering about the rules, unsure of what to do. The senior monk, however, wasted no time. He walked over to the woman, wordlessly lifted her into his arms, carried her across the turbulent river, and set her down gently on the other side. He then bowed slightly and continued his journey. The junior monk, after splashing his own way across the river, hurried to catch up. He was scandalized, and his mind was a storm of judgment. For the next several hours, as they walked in silence, he fumed. He replayed the scene in his mind, building his case, judging the senior monk's transgression. Finally, miles down the road, he could bear it no longer. He burst out, "How could you do that? You know our vows. We are forbidden to touch a woman. You have broken a sacred rule." The senior monk stopped, looked at his agitated companion with a calm, compassionate gaze, and said simply, "Brother, I left that woman by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" We are all, in our own way, the junior monk. We carry the memory of past hurts, old arguments, and personal failures with us, long after the events themselves have dissolved into nothingness. We cling to these burdens, believing they are important, when in reality they are just dead leaves, poisoning our present experience. Non-attachment is the wisdom of the senior monk. It is the practice of leaving the woman by the river. It is the skill of letting go of what is already gone. It is forgiveness of others, and, most importantly, of ourselves. It is understanding that the past has no power over us unless we give it power by clinging to it in the present moment. This practice of letting go is not a single act, but a continuous process of returning. We return from our anxious thoughts about the future. We return from our resentful thoughts about the past. We return, again and again, to the simple, direct, and living reality of the here and now. This is a life lived with an open hand and a light heart. It does not mean we do not love, or plan, or act. It means we do so with a newfound freedom, a freedom from the heavy weight of a past that is gone and a future that has not yet arrived. This constant practice of letting go, of returning, requires a specific kind of spiritual muscle. It demands patience, gentleness, and the quiet discipline of a daily commitment. We have journeyed through the great principles of the path, seeing clearly, intending kindly, speaking truthfully, and letting go of what no longer serves us. It is an inspiring and beautiful landscape, but as we stand before it, a very modern and very human question arises. How long will this take? In a culture that promises instant results, 6-minute abs, and overnight success, the gradual, organic nature of spiritual transformation can be a profound challenge. We want the peace of the bamboo grove, but we want it delivered by next day shipping. The wisdom of this path, however, teaches us that the heart and mind cannot be hacked. They are not machines to be re-engineered, but gardens to be cultivated. And a garden grows according to its own timeless, silent rhythm, a rhythm that requires two of the most vital and underrated virtues: patience and daily practice. There is a parable that perfectly illustrates the nature of this growth, the parable of the Chinese bamboo tree. A farmer plants a tiny bamboo seed in the ground. He waters it, tends to the soil, and protects it from harm. He does this every single day for an entire year, yet nothing appears above the surface. A second year passes. He continues his patient, daily ritual of watering and caring for the seemingly barren patch of earth. Still nothing. The third year, and then the fourth year, pass in the same way. His neighbors, watching him tend to this empty spot, might think he is a fool, wasting his time on a dead seed. But the farmer persists. Then, sometime during the fifth year, a single, tiny green sprout pushes its way through the soil. And in the next 6 weeks, something miraculous happens. The bamboo tree shoots up at an astonishing rate, growing to a height of over 80 feet. The question is this: did the tree grow 80 feet in 6 weeks, or did it grow for 5 years? The answer, of course, is that it grew for 5 years. For all those long, fruitless years, when nothing seemed to be happening on the surface, the most important work was being done underground. The tree was silently, patiently building a vast and complex root system, a foundation strong enough and wide enough to support its magnificent and sudden ascent. Our spiritual practice is exactly like the cultivation of this bamboo tree. The majority of our growth happens underground, unseen. We sit for our daily meditation, and it may feel like nothing is happening. Our mind is still a chaotic storm of thoughts. We still feel restless. We see no dramatic changes. Day after day, week after week, we water the seed. It is in this patient, seemingly unrewarding, and often mundane daily effort that we are building our root system. We are slowly, silently, forging new neural pathways in the brain. We are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. We are deepening our capacity for self-compassion. We are nourishing the foundations of wisdom and ethical conduct. There may be no visible sprout for a long time, but the invisible roots are spreading, creating the stability that will one day support a profound transformation. This is why a consistent, daily practice is so much more powerful than a sporadic, intense one. Meditating for just 15 minutes every single day is infinitely more effective than sitting for 3 hours once a month. It is the steady, rhythmic dripping of water that eventually wears away the hardest stone. The daily practice becomes a sacred appointment with yourself, a non-negotiable act of mental and spiritual hygiene, as essential as brushing your teeth. Find a time and a place. Perhaps it is in the quiet of the early morning, before the world makes its demands on you. Find a comfortable corner, sit down, and for a short while, simply come home to yourself. The practice can be simple: a few minutes of mindfulness of the breath to anchor you in the present, a few moments of reflection to set an intention of kindness for the day ahead, a moment to feel gratitude for the simple fact of being alive. This is the daily watering of the seed. This steady practice requires a quality of heart known as kshanti, a Sanskrit word that translates as patience, tolerance, or forbearance. Kshanti is not the passive, resigned waiting for something to happen. It is an active and courageous virtue. It is the strength to stay present with reality as it is, without needing it to be different. It is the patience to accept the pace of our own unfolding. We must be patient with the practice itself. There will be days when meditation feels easy and the mind is calm. There will be other days when it feels like a wrestling match with a swarm of angry bees. The wise practitioner greets both experiences with the same steady equanimity. The point is not to have a good meditation. The point is simply to meditate. The act of showing up, regardless of the result, is the victory. We must also be deeply patient with ourselves. We will forget our intention. We will fall back into old, reactive habits. We will speak harshly. We will get caught in anxiety. The path is not a straight, upward line. It is a spiral. We will circle back to the same challenges again and again. But each time, we meet them from a slightly higher ground, with a little more awareness and a little more kindness. The practice is not about never falling down. It is about learning to get up with ever-increasing grace. Because so much of this growth is underground, we must learn to recognize the subtle signs that our roots are strengthening. The changes may not be dramatic. It might be a pause, just a split second longer than usual, between an angry impulse and a spoken word. It might be a sudden moment of genuine empathy for a stranger. It might be the ability to catch ourselves in a negative thought loop a little sooner than before. It might be a wave of gratitude that arises spontaneously while washing the dishes. These are the tiny green shoots. They are the evidence that our patient, daily watering is bearing fruit, that the vast, unseen network of roots is taking hold, preparing us for the life that is to come. This path is not a race. It is the slow, patient, and loving cultivation of a lifetime. It is about tending to our inner garden every day, trusting that even when we cannot see it, a silent and powerful growth is always taking place. As this inner foundation becomes deeper and more stable, its effects cannot be contained. it inevitably begins to transform the entire ecosystem of our lives, changing not just how we relate to ourselves in silence, but fundamentally reshaping the way we connect with others in the beautiful, messy, and unpredictable dance of our relationships. The patient, daily work of tending our inner garden is not a solitary pursuit meant only for the meditation cushion. Its true purpose and its ultimate test are found in the dynamic, unpredictable, and often challenging arena of our relationships. It is in our interactions with our partners, our children, our colleagues, and our friends that the seeds of our practice either wither in the heat of conflict or blossom into tangible expressions of wisdom and love. Here, the path moves from theory to life itself. Our relationships are the sacred ground where we learn to embody the flexible, resilient, and open-hearted way of the bamboo. For most of us, our default approach to relationships is that of the rigid oak. We enter into connections with a solid, unexamined set of expectations, rules, and demands. Our ego is in charge, and its primary concerns are being right, being in control, and feeling secure. This rigidity manifests in familiar and painful ways. It shows up as judgment, the constant cataloging of another person's faults and how they fail to meet our standards. It appears as blame, the convenient habit of making someone else responsible for our own unhappiness. It manifests as the need to control, the subtle or overt attempt to change people, to mold them into the version of them that would make us feel most comfortable. In conversation, this rigidity appears as a habit of listening only to form a rebuttal, to defend our position, to win the argument. This oak-like approach, rooted in the illusion of a separate and superior self, is what makes our relationships brittle. They become a source of constant friction and power struggles, and under the inevitable storms of life, they often crack and break. The way of the bamboo offers a path from this rigidity to a liberating fluidity. It is the application of all the principles we have cultivated to the living reality of another person. Instead of judgment, we practice acceptance. Seeing through the lens of anatta, we recognize that the other person is not a fixed, solid entity, but a complex, unfolding process, just like us. They have their own history, their own wounds, their own conditioning. To accept them as they are, without the constant, draining project of trying to fix them, is an act of profound love. It creates a space where they can feel safe to be themselves. Instead of blame, we practice taking responsibility for our own reactions. We see that while another's words or actions may be the first arrow, our own anger, resentment, or hurt feelings are the second arrow that we fire at ourselves. We shift our focus from changing them to working with our own mind. Instead of control, we practice letting go. We apply the wisdom of non-attachment, learning to love someone freely, without needing them to fulfill our agenda or guarantee our happiness. We give them the greatest gift we can offer, the space to be who they are. To navigate this fluid way of relating, the Buddhist tradition offers a sublime compass, the four immeasurables, or Brahma-viharas. These are four boundless qualities of the heart that we can consciously cultivate to transform all of our interactions. The first is metta, or loving kindness. This is the baseline intention of goodwill we bring to a relationship. It is the sincere and simple wish for the other person to be genuinely happy and well. We can practice this by taking a moment before interacting with a loved one to silently wish them peace, joy, and freedom from difficulty. This simple act changes our own inner climate, ensuring that we enter the interaction with a heart of warmth, not demand. The second is karuna, or compassion, which we have already explored. In relationships, this is the ability to be present for another's pain, without trying to immediately fix it or turn away from it. It is the practice of deep, non-judgmental listening. When a person is suffering, the most healing thing we can offer is not advice, but the safe, silent, compassionate space of our full attention. The third is mudita, or sympathetic joy. This is one of the most beautiful and challenging practices. It is the ability to feel genuine, unselfish joy in the happiness and success of others. In a competitive culture, another person's good fortune can often trigger our own feelings of envy or inadequacy. Mudita is the antidote. It is the practice of celebrating their victories as if they were our own. To feel happy simply because someone you love is happy creates a powerful, positive bond that transcends the ego's petty comparisons. The fourth, and balancing, quality is upekkha, or equanimity. This is the deep, peaceful wisdom that understands we cannot ultimately control another person's life, happiness, or suffering. We can love them, support them, and offer them our best, but their journey is their own. Equanimity is not indifference. It is a spacious, unshakable love that is free from the anxiety of attachment. It protects us from burnout and allows us to love sustainably, offering our support without losing our own center. It is the deep peace of the bamboo grove, which offers shelter but does not try to command the direction of the wind. The most practical way to bring all these qualities to life is through the meditative act of deep listening. Imagine a familiar scene. A couple is having a recurring argument. The topic may seem trivial: finances, chores, how to spend the weekend, but underneath, it is always the same conflict. The conversation quickly escalates into a predictable script of accusation, defense, and blame. Both parties speak, but neither feels heard. Now, imagine one evening, one of them decides to do something different. As the argument begins, instead of launching their usual defense, they take a breath and say, "Wait, I can see you're upset. Tell me more. I want to understand what this feels like for you." And then they simply listen. They listen not to find flaws in the other's argument, but to understand the feeling behind the words, the fear, the frustration, the feeling of being unappreciated. They listen with their whole body, with the same non-judgmental attention they bring to the breath on the meditation cushion. In that moment, the entire dynamic of the conflict shatters. The other person, feeling truly heard for perhaps the first time, no longer needs to shout. Their anger softens into vulnerability. The wall between them dissolves, and a space of connection opens. In that space, a real solution can be found, one born not from winning a fight, but from mutual understanding. This is the power of bringing our practice into our relationships. We discover that every interaction is an opportunity to practice mindfulness. Every disagreement is a chance to cultivate patience, and every person is a teacher showing us where our own heart is still rigid and closed. By learning to bend with the winds of our relationships, we do not become weak or passive. We become more deeply and authentically connected, transforming our connections from a primary source of our suffering into a profound and beautiful vehicle for our awakening. This deep integration of our practice, weaving it into the very fabric of how we relate to ourselves and to others, builds an unshakable inner core. The final step on our journey is to recognize that these are not separate techniques, but aspects of a single, holistic way of being in the world, the way of the bamboo heart. We have walked a long and winding path together, a journey that has taken us from the storm-swept plains of our own suffering to the quiet, whispering grove of the bamboo. We have explored the landscape of our minds, navigated the turbulent weather of our emotions, and learned to tend the garden of our relationships. We have seen that the way of the bamboo is a path of flexibility, of resilience, of emptiness, and of profound simplicity. Now, we arrive at the culmination of this journey, where all these different streams of practice merge into a single, flowing river. This is the integration of the path into a seamless way of being, a state of being we can call the bamboo heart. The bamboo heart is not a poetic fantasy. It is the living, breathing embodiment of the awakened mind. It is a heart that has cultivated the paradoxical qualities of the bamboo itself. It is profoundly flexible, able to bend and yield to the ever-changing circumstances of life. Yet it is deeply rooted in the unshakable ground of the present moment. Its strength comes not from hardness or defensive armor, but from an astonishing softness, the softness of compassion that can absorb the world's sorrows without breaking. It is hollow in the most beautiful sense, empty of a rigid, fearful, and self-centered ego. And because of this emptiness, it is full of presence, full of clarity, full of a quiet, unshakable peace. It is a heart that has learned the secret that true joy is not found in the frantic accumulation of more, but in the simple, elegant, and profound richness of a life lived with awareness and kindness. This state is not achieved by mastering one single technique. It is the natural result of weaving together all the threads of the Noble Eightfold Path into the fabric of our daily life. The training in wisdom gave us the clear sight to see the world as it is impermanent, interconnected, and selfless. Right view was the map that corrected our mistaken beliefs, while right intention set our inner compass towards the shores of liberation. This is the knowing quality of the bamboo heart. the clarity that cuts through confusion. The training in ethical conduct was the loom upon which we wove this wisdom into our actions. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood ensured that our journey through the world was graceful, harmless, and beautiful, creating an outer life of peace that could support our inner work. This is the expression of the bamboo heart, its gentle and compassionate touch upon the world. Finally, the training in mental discipline gave us the skill and strength to do the work. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration were the tools we used to build the deep and resilient root system of our practice, taming the wild energy of the mind and transforming it into a calm, powerful ally. This is the unshakable stability of the bamboo heart, its profound and imperturbable core. These three trainings are not separate. They are one integrated system. The clear seeing of wisdom guides our actions to be more compassionate. Compassionate action calms the mind, freeing it from guilt and restlessness. A calm mind is the perfect instrument for seeing reality with even greater wisdom. The wheel turns, and with each rotation, the bamboo heart grows stronger, more supple, and more radiant. A story from the Zen tradition perfectly illustrates this integrated state of being in action. A great tea master was preparing for a ceremony in his small, tranquil tea house. His movements were precise, graceful, and filled with a serene, focused attention. As he began, however, the sounds of a fierce battle erupted in the streets just outside. The air was filled with the clash of swords, the shouts of soldiers, and the sounds of chaos and death. The master's students, who were assisting him, became terrified and agitated. Their hands trembled, their minds were scattered, and they could not focus on the simple task of preparing tea. The tea master, however, seemed not to notice the turmoil. His movements remained fluid, his attention remained complete, and his expression was one of perfect serenity. He purified the bowl, whisked the powdered green tea, and offered a bowl to his most senior student with a gentle bow. The student, his own heart pounding with fear, looked at his teacher in disbelief. "Master," he whispered, "how can you be so calm? There is a battle raging right outside our walls. Don't you hear it?" The master looked at him with a kind and steady gaze and replied softly, "The battle is outside. In here, we are just having tea." This is the bamboo heart. It is not a heart that is deaf or blind to the suffering and chaos of the world. It is not a state of blissful ignorance or spiritual bypassing. The tea master was fully aware of the battle, but he was not a prisoner of it. His inner peace was not dependent on the external conditions being peaceful. He had cultivated a sanctuary within himself, a place of such deep stability and presence that the storms of the world could rage against its walls without disturbing the tranquility within. This is the essence of resilient peace. It is a peace that can hold pain. It is a joy that can coexist with sorrow. It is a love that is not broken by loss. A life lived from the bamboo heart is a life transformed. It is not a life free from problems, but it is a life free from being problematized by our own reactive minds. It is a life where we can engage with the world's challenges with courage and an open heart without being consumed by despair. It is a life where our primary motivation shifts from the anxious question of "what can I get for myself?" to the generous and joyful inquiry of "how can I be of service?" This state of being is not a distant, mythical achievement reserved for saints and masters. It is the natural birthright of every human being. It is the full blossoming of the seed of wakefulness that lies dormant within us all. It is the result of a path that is, at its core, a simple and profound process, the patient, diligent, and compassionate training of our own heart and mind. By walking this path, by tending to our own inner garden, we discover that the peace, freedom, and resilience we have been seeking in the outer world has been waiting for us, all along, in the quiet, hollow, and unshakable center of our own being. We began our journey together in the heart of a storm, watching a great and stubborn oak tree fight a battle it could not win. We saw its rigid strength become its own undoing, and in its cracking limbs, we recognized the reflection of our own exhausted, anxious, and overwhelmed hearts. We saw that we, too, had been taught to be the oak, to resist the winds of life, and that this resistance was the very source of our breaking. But then we turned our gaze to the whispering grove, and we chose a different path. We chose the way of the bamboo. Our journey has been a deep exploration of that choice. We walked the path of the Buddha, a path that first gave us the courage to look honestly at our own suffering, and then the clarity to see its roots in our own clinging and craving. It showed us the profound, liberating truth that an end to this suffering is possible, and it gave us a map to get there, a path of wisdom, ethical living, and mental cultivation. We learned to see the world not as solid and permanent, but as a fluid, interconnected dance. We learned to let go of the heavy burden of a separate self. We learned to nourish the roots of compassion, to find strength in community, and to discover the quiet wealth of simplicity. We learned to be still, to watch our own minds with kindness, and to greet the weather of our emotions with a spacious and accepting heart. The goal of this journey was never to learn how to stop the storms. The storms of life, of loss, of change, of uncertainty will always come. The goal was to learn how to dance. It was to discover that true strength is not found in rigid resistance, but in a supple, yielding resilience. True peace is not a destination we arrive at when all our problems are solved. It is the unshakable quality of a heart that has learned to bend without breaking. It is the quiet stillness within the swaying stalk, a peace that is not dependent on the weather. The way of the bamboo is not an ancient, inaccessible ideal. It is your own innate capacity for wisdom, clarity, and love. The path does not begin with a grand gesture, but with the smallest, most intimate steps. It begins right now, in this moment. It begins with the simple intention to be a little kinder to yourself. It begins with one conscious breath, anchoring you in the present. It begins with the choice to truly listen to another person without formulating a response. It begins with letting go of one small resentment you have been carrying. You have the map, you have the tools, and you have within you the seed of the bamboo. Tend to it patiently, water it with your daily attention, and trust in the silent, powerful growth that is always happening just beneath the surface.